What's up, guys? Welcome to Weird Week Live. Well, we're kind of live, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But today's show is going to be a big one. We're going to be recapping where we are at the end of 2024 and looking at where I think we're going to be going into 2025. It's a massive show today, and I get so excited putting this stuff together because I'm learning just as much as you are. And some of these things that are just readily available public knowledge that seem to be just hiding in plain sight is crazy. And we're going to be looking at in all of that stuff today. So we've got a few quick things that I want to touch on first before we really get into the meat of the show. So first of all, we're going to be looking at President Jimmy Carter, who recently passed away this week, and his UFO experiences. We've got a quick update on the drone situation as well. I'm probably not going to use the word drone as we move into 2025 because the United States themselves have admitted that they don't know what these things are. So they're UFOs. We've got planes falling out the sky. I don't know if you've seen any of that, but we've had 6 planes in the last 48 hours they've either crashed or they've had an emergency landing. So we're going to be looking at all of those and kind of giving you my take on what I think could be going on there. We've got an update from Stephen Greer, Michael Herrera, these Black Project whistleblowers that are meant to be coming forward like literally within the next week or so. More madness from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. We went deep into that last week, and I've got something that I thought was worth sharing to add on to that this week as well. But we're going to focus more on the United States Air Force. And again, some of the things that just seem to be hiding in plain sight. We're going to be breaking all of that down. And the big part to end the show is we're going to be looking at the terrible truth theory. Now, this was an article that came out about Nick Pope suggesting that the truth about the phenomenon is simply too disturbing to be shared and that it might be really distressing for humanity. So I've gathered a whole bunch of videos from people who seem to be in the know or are in the know, and we're going to look at their opinions on how they feel after learning the truth. And after all of that, at the end of the video, I'm going to give you my takes. I'm not going to hold back. I feel like at the end of the year, this is a really cool opportunity to just kind of put it out there and tell you exactly what I think is going on with UFOs, with orbs, with aliens and our consciousness, the origins of humanity, non-human intelligence, all of it. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I think is going on right now. And I'm going to use that as sort of like a time capsule. And at the end of 2025, I think it'd be cool to maybe look back, see maybe if what I thought, anything has come to light, what was wrong, what was right. I don't know. I just feel like it's fitting at the end of the year. So there's a lot to get into today, and we're going to be doing it live, and I'm going to make sure I do put markers in for the video, for the topic chapters below the video, because, you know, I know that TikTok attention span can get to you sometimes, and you get a little bit bored. I know, I get it. So there'll be markers there. If you get a little bit bored, just skip forward, all right? It's not a big deal. So, first of all, before we get into the stories, just quickly, I know I've been yapping for a while already. A little bit of housekeeping stuff. Now, we're going to start with the smaller news, and we're going to move into the big one. First of all, when I started this channel, it was never meant to just be Weird Week, but I obviously had to start somewhere. And the response so far for Weird Week has been great. Way better than I really expected, to be honest. I love that people are interested in kind of going down these rabbit holes, looking into the things that the mainstream media don't tell you about. And it's just awesome to see that so many people are aware and understand that we're not really told the whole truth about what's going on in the world around us. So this week, I actually uploaded an additional video, which was about the Hopi prophecy, and it was more of like a deep dive into their prophecy, which is more about like the human trajectory and where we're going. The video was filmed in 1972, so it was kind of talking about where he thought we were headed, and I believe it's more relevant than ever right now. So although this channel is branded, I guess, as like a UFO channel, that's certainly where its roots are. But after researching this topic for nearly 20 years, I think it's very clear that that understanding the UFO and non-human intelligence phenomenon is also the door or the gateway to understanding humanity and understanding where we came from, how we got here, why we're here, and why perhaps we can't seem to pull ourselves out of a constant state of war. So these are the kind of questions and ideas that I really endeavor to explore through this channel. So while the Hopi tribe itself isn't really UFO related, I think there are a lot of parallels in that video. And, there are dots to be connected there. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link to it in the video description. Again, it is a little bit different, but I'm interested to see what you think. But also, it's important to remember that a lot of the things that I talk about in that video and the things I'll talk about in this video, this is all conjecture. I mean, like, this whole topic is conjecture at the end of the day. The premise of it is the fact that we aren't being told the truth, and we're trying to work out what that truth is. So I just encourage people to use your own critical thinking. When you hear me say things and ideas, I'm basing this off of nearly 20 years of research and looking into this topic, and just kind of giving you my takes on how I understand it. So don't take it for gospel. Do your own research. But this is all just about spitballing and kind of calling it how we see it. And I'm always open to being wrong as well. So get used to that. There are going to be a lot more regular videos coming in between Weird Weeks, deep dives into specific topics, but it's all going to relate to the greater question of who we are and how we got here. That's what the channel is about. That's what Polarity is about. So let's get on to Weird Week now. So I think that this show will realize its full potential as a live stream show, which is kind of what we're doing today. I ran a poll earlier in the week, kind of gauging the interest of people who would tune into a live show and seeing what people's time zones are, because obviously if people are in bed, it's not going to be any good for a live show. Ultimately, I feel like it's maybe a little bit too early to take that step, but I don't feel like we're too far away either. So I decided to run this Weird Week as kind of like a one-take pre-recorded live show, just as like a proof of concept, because even if you can't make the live stream, you'll still be able to watch the pre-recording like a normal Weird Week. And it's going to feel a little bit more like this, a little bit more live, raw, and unedited. And I think that's ultimately going to be more beneficial for the channel, because I can spend less time editing, which means I can put more time into creating more videos and more content and exploring more topics. And I think ultimately that's what everyone wants, right? It's what I want. So that's what we're going to do. This is kind of like a proof of concept. So also be patient with me. This is my first time doing this. I'm learning the ropes. We might have a few mess ups, but we're in this together. We're learning together. So bear with me. We'll see how it flows, how you enjoy it. Let me know if you like this kind of style, and I'll see how it flows from a hosting perspective as well. So what's next? So we've talked about Weird Week and all the extra deep dives that are going to be happening on the channel, but there is something else that's going to be coming on the channel. And this is something that I never really thought I would do. In fact, when I thought about getting into content creation, I specifically thought I don't want to do that, because there's already too many. But then as it started, I began to realize that, just because something is saturated, a market is saturated, that shouldn't be a reason to not get into it. Like, if there is a genuine interest or a reason to participate, you should do that. So I promised myself that I wouldn't force it. I wouldn't just do it for the sake of it. And I would only add it to this channel when I feel like I'd found something or someone that would bring genuine value to the audience. Something that's not just a copy paste of what everybody else is doing. And it gives me genuine excitement to speak to them. So if you haven't guessed what that might be already, it is going to be the first episode of a Polarity podcast. So these aren't podcasts that I intend to do by myself. I intend to have a guest on every episode. Now, I'm not going to commit to these weekly, because like I said, I'm only going to do it if I feel like I have a guest that can genuinely bring something unique and interesting to the table. So I've found that, and I'm super stoked to talk to this person. We're going to be speaking next week. We've already spoke on the phone, and I think it's going to be a great conversation. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it, especially if you're from my country, Australia. And I'm not going to give you too much. I'm not going to give too much more away on that, but I will give you 4 words as a clue, and we'll leave it at that. And that is Australian Reverse Engineering Program. That's all I'll say. Let me know in the comments where you think that's headed, but yeah, that's it. Polarity Podcast is going to be coming in 2025. I'm really excited for it. And if anyone else can think of a better name, I mean, I think Polarity Podcast works, but I also feel like we could probably do better. So let me know what you think. And last of all, for the housekeeping, I'm sorry, we're getting there. The last thing is that thanks to all of your support, we're now monetized. And some of you know that I unexpectedly got made redundant from my full-time job as a visual effects artist 2 weeks before Christmas, which was a shock, but I took that as a sign and opportunity to pursue this full-time. I love doing this, and while I was doing it and working, it was really hard. All I could really manage was like one episode of Weird Week. But now I have all the time in the world, and I've got lots of ideas. So there's going to be a lot of content coming in 2025. So thank you for all of your support. When I got made redundant, I had like 250 subscribers. That was 3 weeks ago, and now we're at 1,500. So I can't. The response has just been overwhelming. So thank you so much. And this has just felt right. You know, it just has felt really right to be doing this. And my family supports it as well, which I'm really grateful for. So let me just get a quick drink in here. Okay. Now, what that also means is that you can now become a member of Polarity. So you can now support me directly with a monthly membership of $4.95 USD per month. Now, obviously, this is totally optional. You're not going to miss out on anything if you don't become a member. But if you've been enjoying Weird Week, if you've been enjoying Polarity, this is a way that you can contribute to me, help keep things alive. You're going to get some rewards as well. We've got member badges that will change and grow the longer you're a member. Your name will be included in all of Weird Week and all of Polarity videos moving forward at the end of the video as a thank you as part of the credits. We'll also be shouting you out on live streams and stuff like that when we eventually do go live. And as the channel grows and we expand, I'm going to be looking into more perks and things as well, such as additional members-only videos, and maybe some Discord access and hangouts and stuff like that. So I'm really excited. I think 2025 is honestly going to be massive. I've got lots of plans, too many plans, but we're going to get there, and it's going to be so good. So yeah, again, I just want to stress though that that's totally optional, obviously. You can support me for free just by liking the videos, sharing them around, and subscribing and commenting and just getting involved. Like, that means just as much to me as a paid subscription. It honestly does. So again, thank you guys. I'll stop rambling now, and let's get into the main part of the show. All right, so first things first is we're going to touch on President Jimmy Carter. He was the 37th president of the United States, and he just passed away at the ripe age of 100 this week. So before Jimmy Carter ran for president in 1969, he actually had a UFO experience that changed his life. This is well documented. You can look this up. It's on Wikipedia. He saw a light in the sky that approached kind of over a clearing of trees. It changed, I think, from white to blue to red, back to white, and then just zipped away. And remember, this is in 1969. So that versus the technology that was readily available. I mean, even today it's mind-blowing, but, think about 60 years ago. So as he campaigned to become the president in 1976, he actually was open about his UFO encounter, and he kind of pledged to get to the bottom of UFOs. He would release all the information to science and to the public. And I believe, as Richard Dolan tells the story, that before he got in office, he was actually briefed on what the truth is about UFOs and what is actually going on. And this is a story that, can't really be verified. The sources are anonymous, but it's through Richard Dolan, who's probably one of the most respected names in this space. And he says that through firsthand witnesses that President Jimmy Carter, after learning the truth, was seen with his head in his hands. Some say he was crying. Some say he was just sighing, maybe weeping, or even praying. But ultimately, he was deeply distressed. And that is a theme that seems to run through a lot of people who learn the truth. And that's actually the final segment of today's episode. And we're going to be looking at all of that. And I'm really excited for that part. But whatever it was, the UFO phenomenon's implications on humanity caused him a lot of deep distress. And once he took office, he didn't release anything. He completely went back on that, just citing national security as his reasons, as has almost every president ever since then, if they've even spoken about it at all. So yeah, 100 years old, rest in peace, Jimmy Carter. He was one of the good guys, and he wasn't the first or the last person to advocate for disclosure, and then once actually learning the truth, to just completely backflip on that. So Nick Pope has suggested recently this year that the truth is possibly too terrible to be told. And yeah, that's what we're going to be getting into later. I'm really excited for that part. But like I said, I want to just get a couple of more recent things that have happened this week just out the door quickly. I feel like they deserve to be touched on, but that is going to be the meat of the show. So yeah, that wraps up Jimmy Carter. Let's look at the next thing. Drones. This is the last time I think I'm going to call them drones, because they're not drones, at least not in the sense that we actually care about. Like if they are drones with little propellers that are operated by someone or the government, I don't think anyone cares about that. I think everyone knows the government and the deep state or whatever has some kind of technology that we don't know about. And that's also what we're going to be getting into today, and I can't wait. But just quickly, the government are doing press release after press release, openly saying, yeah, we don't know what these things are. So where did drones come from? You're telling us they're unidentified, right? And they're flying in the air. I swear we had a name for that. Unidentified flying objects. Oh yeah, they're UFOs. Okay, let's just come right back from UAP to drone back to where it started, because these things are unidentified. Hey, that doesn't mean they're aliens. It doesn't mean they're from Mars. It means they're unidentified flying objects. Okay, so let's stop trying to like weave and steer the narrative in certain directions and just call it for what they are. Okay, these are at the very least unidentified anomalous phenomena. Okay, they're not drones. So I'm just letting you know, drones is staying in 2024. And from here on, 2025, if we're going to talk about this, because I don't even know if we will, because let's be honest, it's getting a bit boring, to be honest. I mean, we've looked at so many UFO sighting videos, and I mean, I can't just keep showing the same things every week. These things are everywhere. They're in the sky. We can't really explain what they are. It's not even new or exciting anymore. And just that in itself is crazy, right? The fact that there's shit in the sky everywhere. So much that I can't even be bothered showing you them on a UFO related channel. Okay, that's where we're at moving into 2025. Okay, now that that's clear, I personally associate the term UFO with whether it's like a tic tac, a saucer, a disc, or a triangle. Like the nuts and bolts things to me, that's like a UFO, right? And and to be honest, I will say as well, especially after last week and what we're going to look at this week, I think 90% of the UFOs that we see are Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or controlled by the military industrial complex. I mean, that is honestly becoming obvious to me. And I almost feel like that's a little bit of like a letdown, like a shit answer. Like people might be like, like a little bit bummed that it's not aliens. But really, it's equally as crazy when you really realize that there is departments within the government or possibly beyond the oversight of the government that have technology that we could not distinguish from alien technology. Like, I genuinely think after what we've looked at last week and what we're about to look at this week, that is a reality. Okay. So when we're talking about more like orbs and things in the sky, that is when I feel like UAP makes a bit more sense, because unidentified is anomalous, phenomena. I just feel like that word suits the orbs better. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling here. So despite the drone ban in New Jersey, these lights are still appearing in the sky, and nothing's really changed. There's still videos all over X and TikTok, but we're also starting to see them spread around the world now, and even here in Australia. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a video. We're going to switch over here, and we're going to look at something that we've already looked at in the very first episode of Weird Week that I think was filmed maybe somewhere in South America. I don't actually know the location. And something identical, and this is very unique looking, something identical has popped up in Australia, in Victoria. All right, let's hop over there and let's take a look. Okay, yeah, look, we got the little fancy transitions and the screen going. All right, I can't help myself. Okay, I know this is live; it's just meant to be raw, but I had to add a little something. All right, so we're going to be looking at the drones now. The first thing I want to show you is the sighting that popped up in Victoria this week. Now, if you've been watching Weird Week from day one, you might recognize this shape straight away. I certainly did. And as soon as I saw it, I had to reach out to the person who posted it. And that is the Aussie UFO Network. I think I got that right. It's on the video anyway. Shout out to him and his channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Go and check him out. But let's take a look at this video.
About that same place.
Now, I don't think we have audio.
Looks great.
But the audio is nothing too interesting anyway. But check this out. Aussie UFO News is the name. Look at that. Roiling like the sun. Anybody? Not quite orange, but look at the shape of that craft.
I'll just set up the old box.
Now, again, if you've been watching for a little while, you might recognize what that looks like. And I've made a comparison to that video. I put them side by side. Let's check it out. Now, let me move this over a little bit. So this video on the left is a video that was filmed, again, I think it was in South America earlier in the year. Around the time of the UAP hearings, this came out. And it kind of shot up because Michael Schellenberger's Immaculate Constellation document had detailed craft roiling like the surface of the sun. And we looked into that and gave some examples a few weeks ago as well. But look at these craft, like the shape of them, the texture, that roiling aspect. The only difference is the color. And it's such a unique shape. It's such a unique surface. Like, you know, can anybody even explain what that is or what it could be? I have a little comparison photo here to look at. I tried to find the best frames of these two things. I mean, it's just super interesting. Like, whatever this is, we don't know about it. That's for sure. And it kind of looks similar to the Calvine UFO, which is probably one of the most, I guess, widely accepted as authentic UFO photographs. This was taken in Scotland, I think in the 80s or the 70s. I don't actually know if that's accurate, but it's not recent, put it that way. And although these shapes aren't exact, they're very similar. And, you know, even like these things here on the left, these could be like looking at this Calvine UFO perhaps from another angle. Like perhaps this UFO is shorter on one side. Who knows? I'm kind of reaching there, but I'm just kind of highlighting that there are a lot of similarities here that are just kind of otherworldly looking. And this is in Australia as well. So given this, right, before we move on, I just want to say something about drones and AI. And I feel like a lot of non-believers or debunkers will come forward with the idea that, or their argument will be, show me a photo of a real UFO, then I'll believe it. Show me a photo of the aliens and I'll believe it. Why are all the photos so blurry? Why can't we get a clear photo? Okay, that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. But let's assume that all three of these photos are real, okay? I think they are. Let's just say that they are for this argument's sake. If you showed this to someone, they're going to go, it's just AI. That's AI. That's fake. That's CGI. Because when you show them the proof that is real and a smack in the face, then it disrupts their reality. It breaks the mold that's been set based on the commonly accepted rules and ideas that are force-fed into them through the mainstream media. Like not just the news, but like TV shows, kids shows, movies, and even like conventional education systems, right? These things, you are grown up to believe that these are little green men from outer space, and it's just a wacky conspiracy theory and blah, 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 blah. So when you see that undeniable proof, like you already have these, well, they already have these other kind of bullets in the chamber ready to fire as to why it's not true, okay? So I agree that everything that we look at in terms of evidence, photographic, video evidence, should be viewed with the lens that it is possibly AI or CGI, right? I agree with that. I think that's a good perspective to have. But if you are then going to jump online or publicly argue against it or make a statement without actually researching it for yourself, you're a clown, okay? Because whilst I agree with assuming things are fake and assuming it's AI or CGI, whatever, you know, we can't afford to just swallow what the mainstream news is putting in front of us, right? You need to think critically and research and make your own mind up about these current events and these wild claims. Now, I'm not saying that every story that's on the news should be peer reviewed by every household individually, but what I'm trying to say is that if it's something that like directly affects yours or your family's life, and I'm not even just talking about UFOs here, I'm saying anything, any news story, if it actually is going to have an effect on you directly, firsthand, do your own research about it, make your own mind up about it, because the people that are feeding it to you have lied to you in the past. Like, we know that. That's clear. Okay. Now, if it's an opinion that you feel the need to then go online and speak about, whether saying it's fake or whether it's true, you should do your own research. Because just because a photo like this questions your narrative of life and reality, who gave you that narrative? Oh, it's the same people who have not been honest about a lot of things. It's the same people who have lied about reasons to go to war, vaccines, vaccine efficiency, how your tax money is being spent. There's lots of occasions where the same people have not been honest with us. So to keep eating off of that spoon without looking at what's on it and thinking about, is that healthy for me? What effect does that food have on my mind? Who benefits from me eating that food? These are the things you need to be thinking about, okay? So have that skeptical approach to photos and videos, but don't base your assumptions on what the same people who have lied to you have told you, is what I'm trying to say. I feel like I've done this in a very roundabout way, but yeah, I just think do your own research, because I don't believe that, like, a lot of the people who I say non-believers, I don't think they're not intelligent. I don't think they're dumb for not believing. I think they're, if I had to put a label on them, I think they're like, maybe like obedient, or they are like just very compliant. And I'm naturally not very compliant. I never have been. I feel like questioning things has just like been an inherent part of my DNA from the youngest age I can remember, like a problem with authority. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Like, it's caused me trouble in my life, but that is just the way that I am. And I think that a lot of these people who are just being obedient and being compliant, and, everyone says aliens are stupid and fake. Okay, I'm going to just accept that and move on. If those people, rather than just seeing a photo that looks unbelievable and dismissing it as AI or whatever, if those same people actually had maybe seen, 10% of the research that I've done for nearly 20 years and the literal hundreds of testimonies independently that span thousands of years from various different cultures and countries that are all talking about the same thing, I feel like when 95% of people understand that and see that for themselves, then you become to realize that, okay, there's actually something here. Because if you don't, the only alternative opinion or view is that all of these hundreds and thousands of people for thousands of years have all been independently of each other having the same hallucination, or have decided to make up the same lie for no benefit. Okay. And that's just silly. I mean, we can agree on that right here, right now, that concept is just ridiculous. Of course, like, why would that happen? Of course, that's not happening. Okay. So it's just about critical thinking. And so I encourage you to maintain your skepticism, but apply critical thinking on top of that. Because I believe that when you do that, these things start to make sense, okay? So just remember, don't eat up what the mainstream media is serving on a spoon to you at 6 p.m. every night without looking at it, without questioning where it comes from, who benefits from you eating it, and what kind of effect does this food have on your mind. All right, that's it. I've rambled enough about that. Let's get into the next story. Okay, so planes are crashing and emergency landing all over the world right now. So in the last 48 hours, 6 planes from all around the world have either just crashed with like mass fatalities, or they've had to make emergency landings with like serious issues. Okay. This never really happens, like ever. And we've now had 6 in 48 hours. Now, some people might think I'm reaching. Someone I've spoke to thought that there was nothing to that. I tend to disagree. Maybe because I'm a conspiracy theorist nut job, but to be fair, I think there's something to that. And I'm going to tell you why. But first, we're going to look at all the things that have happened in the last 48 hours, and then I'll give you my take on it. All right, let's hop back to the other screen. All right, we don't need this anymore. We're going to be looking at plane crashes. So we're starting in Australia here. So this is Jetstar flight JQ170 to Thailand. Had to make an emergency landing due to a landing gear issue. Okay, so there was a problem with like the wheels deploying or some kind of issue with the landing gear. This one wasn't too major, but it's definitely recent. Now, the next one, we have a KLM flight, which I believe there was like a hydraulic or landing gear issue that caused them to skid off the runway. Wild looking video. I'm just going to make sure that I'm getting this sound through my headphones, because that way I'll know if you're getting blasted with volume. Like I said, guys, come on, I'm learning on the job here. Bear with me, we're getting there. Right, KLM flight. Okay. Now I can hear what you can hear. And I can make sure you're not getting blasted with sound. Okay, good. We got that covered. Next one. We have, okay, this is where they start to get a little bit intense, to be honest. Okay, so Azerbaijan, this is Azerbaijan Airlines flight 28243, requested to make an emergency landing. This was filmed. Oh my god. Okay, I couldn't hear that in my headphones either, and that was really loud, so I apologize. Let me get that down. This plane requested to make an emergency landing, and as you can see there, it didn't quite make it. Now, what's creepy about this, and I actually don't have the photos to pull up for you, but I'll just tell you. When this plane landed, there is what looks like bullet holes all over it. Okay, there's photographs of this. You can look on X and Twitter. Just search the Azerbaijan plane crash. You'll see it for yourself. This plane has bullet holes all over it. So we'll get into that in a little minute. Next up, we have the Air Canada flight. Okay, I'm not hearing this, but I'm looking at the volume meter. It looks okay. So this was a video taken from someone on the plane. And, I mean, just imagine the horror. Watching an engine being engulfed in flames, a big fire, and your plane just rapidly descending to the ground. Like, absolute nightmare. It is for me. And I've actually always had, for as long as I can remember, a recurring dream of plane crashes. Most of the time I'm watching them, just like what that Azerbaijan video looked like. But there have been a few where I'm on the plane as well. And obviously as soon as the plane crashes, I wake up. I've had that my whole life. I'm not necessarily scared of flying, but it's just been a very weird, like, fixation in my dreams. And look, probably the most horrifying one is this one here. So this is Jeju Air Flight 2216, which is a South Korean airline. Landing gear issue again. You can see it's got no front wheel landing gear, so it can't stop. And it collides with a concrete barrier. I think every single person, maybe bar two, on that flight. Super rough. And this is all in the last 48 hours as well, guys. Yeah, I'll give you what I think this means. Let's swap back. Let's swap back to full camera. Hello? Okay, we made it. A few technical difficulties. So, something I noticed that was pointed out online is that all of these countries that have had plane crashes are NATO-associated countries. And 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago, Ukraine, or you could say America by proxy of Ukraine, killed a Russian general. His name was Igor Kirillov, and he was the chief of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops and programs. And he was killed not on the battlegrounds, not on the borders of Russia and Ukraine where this war is happening, but deep into Russia, walking outside of either his house or an apartment building. There was a bomb planted in a electric bicycle, and as soon as he walked out, the bomb was detonated and he died. So this was a coordinated attack deep inside Russian territory. Okay, so well beyond the common battleground that's been established for 2 years now, or whatever, maybe more, whatever it's been. Now, when I read about this, my immediate thought was, this is going to cause retaliation. Like, Russia are going to take this very seriously, and we're going to see something bad happen to Ukraine or the United States or perhaps NATO as a whole, okay? Because that is kind of what this is about, at the very root of it. It's NATO moving too close to Russia. That's how I understand it anyway. Feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong. So the Azerbaijan plane had bullet holes in it, something that's a little bit more, well, it's in Europe, okay? Russia have been known to shoot down planes before. I think something like this happened maybe 5 to 10 years ago. Within that time span, there was a case of this happening. And earlier in the year, you probably remember with the war in the Middle East, Israel had a coordinated attack on Hezbollah. And they did this by remote detonating a bunch of pages. Okay, so I don't know how they did this, whether the pages were intercepted before Hezbollah took them, or if there is some kind of technology that's just capable of remote detonating an electronic device. I don't know. But hundreds of Hezbollah soldiers and commanders and chiefs all had pages on their hips to communicate with each other in like an untracked fashion. And somehow Israel, the West, NATO, somehow had the technology to blow them all up at the same time. And from what I understand, like, most of them died. Okay, so a massive coordinated attack that was able to be executed remotely somehow. Okay, so what I'm wondering is what we are seeing in these planes a similar kind of remote cyber warfare technology being deployed against NATO countries as a warning or an attack of retaliation for the murder of this Russian chief? I don't know. I mean, if that is true, it's honestly pretty scary. I'm not going to lie. So we're not going to stay on this for too long. That's just what I thought when I saw this happen. It may not be true. I wouldn't take it as truth, but it's something to think about. And I think it's probably just worth us keeping an eye on things and just seeing how that develops. Okay, let's get on to the next one. All right, I'll tell you what won't fall out the sky. Lockheed Martin Skunk Works planes, that's for sure. So we went in on a deep dive on the Skunk Works last week, and it was honestly so interesting. Those guys have the UFOs. I mean, that became clear last week. But I found a video from someone who worked in the Skunk Works, and it's about 4 or 5 minutes, I think, and I'm gonna play it. And look, I'll just show you the video to see some of the insane. I mean, he admits that the craft is built from alien technology. I don't want to ruin it for you. I'll play the video, but I do just want to say as well, now that we're monetized, I guess I kind of have to be careful with like copyright things, because if a video gets a copyright strike, I won't get paid for it. And this is essentially my full-time job now. So I want to try and make sure I've got to find the balance of giving you the content, but also weaving through these copyright claims. So I want to say in advance now for the whole video and any video moving forward, if you see me talk about something and then like there seems to be a weird cut or you don't get to see the video, it's probably because it had to be removed because of copyright. But I feel like if you watch the videos early and you get in straight away, you aren't going to have that problem, because they generally take a little bit of time to come through. So that's all the more reason to hit the bell, yeah? Get the notifications, watch the videos as soon as they happen, and you won't miss out on anything. So let's look at this video now. I'll stop yapping. We'll go over to the other screen and we'll check it out. Okay, this is a man named Don Phillips, used to work for the CIA, Air Force, and Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Let's check this out.
My name is Don Phillips, and I live in Los Angeles, California. And I have worked with government-sponsored agencies, but I also went to work for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. My studies had to do with the design, engineering, mechanical, electrical, and aeronautics. I was a pilot, and at the time, 1961, 62, I started my new job in what is called the Skunk Works. Our projects were, of course, a contract special aircraft, flying aircraft, for the government, the United States government, and other agencies of the government, of course, supplied pilots. Las Vegas, or near Las Vegas, Nevada, were very much in close proximity to our areas where we tested our aircraft, and a lot of commonly known as Area 51. We call it the Dreamland, the hog farm, the lake. You know, this place would flood once in a while, and it was really unusable. We're testing airplanes, and everybody knows that it tested special aircraft, such as the Blackbird, which I'm very proud of because that's my baby. When I was working with the Skunk Works, we signed an agreement with the National Security Agency and the National Security Council, as well as the CIA. And we kept very quiet about things because they always knew where we were and what we were doing. And I automatically had that team spirit, and we were a big family there, and I was very proud of that, having worked directly for Kelly Johnson. We worked with the Central Intelligence Agency as contractors. That was during the time of the Skunk Works. You see, the CIA was one of our best customers. And it's the CIA that has one of the world's best air forces. It's not... We have Francis Gary Powers, yeah, we knew him. Schumacher, a lot of these people. They're very real people, and they were often moved around by politics. You understand that the SR-71, we took some great risks. Do you think that some of your, the technology that you incorporated into that aircraft came from outside sources, outside the planet Earth? And I says, it's very possible. But I says, you have to remember, we came up with some, we still have to make it work here on planet Earth. So the propulsion systems, yes, there were new ones being developed. From what I learned over a period of years, anti-gravitational, actually using the force that is generated by naturally by the planet Earth, is to repel off of it. There was research going on with that. We know, we can safely say that yes, there were some captured craft from 1945, or 47 was it? In Roswell, New Mexico, and yeah, they were real, and yes, we really did get some technology from them, and yes, we really did put it to work. And we can thank people in the United States Army to have the foresight to put these into industry for the benefit of the people of the world. I know this to be a fact. We put it to use, but it took us a long time to figure out what it was, and then figure out how we can use it, and then what to use it for. And are those products useful for humanity? I didn't see the craft, nor did I see the bodies, but I certainly know some of the people that did. And of course they're they're passed on now from their earthly bodies, but there was no question that there are people or beings from outside the planet that have lived here for a long time. And it isn't just something new that's been happening in the last couple of years. There's been NATO research conducted, joint research, joint meaning many different countries, and this it's been documented as to who those races are and their population at that time, and this was back in the early 60s. This is when I know that some of the technologies that came out of the Roswell incident. The technologies meaning that which came with the extraterrestrial craft. It took a while to figure out how they worked before we knew what to make from it, and then how to get it into industry. How can it benefit the people? And maybe they had color-coded what we would call fiber optics today that could bend light and that could guide light to one data location to another data location. Well, guess what? We've been talking about it for 6 years. We have that type of technology now. The guidance mechanism were nothing. There was no yoke, there was no wheel, there was a console, very colorful, and they used their hands. And by the thought process, and by the way they moved their hands in rhythm with their thoughts, was the guidance for the aircraft. But we also have, where I live, my neighborhood, I find out that we have prominent research people that are working on what we called in the Foxbat, the movie Foxbat, where they had the helmet that says, oh, you think in this language and you think this and you guide it with your eyes that way and you fire it with your thought process and fire your armament from the aircraft. That's very real. It wasn't perfected to the point that the movie made it perfected, but by gosh, since that time, I think they have come pretty close. I'd like to add too that I feel that I'm not positive, but I think some of this technology came from crafts of other crashes. Okay, not just. There's a lot made of Roswell.
Wild, huh? I mean, he says it. He says everything that is kind of up in the air as conspiracy theory, I guess. So then it comes down to the idea of, do you believe him or not? Well, I'll just straight up tell you that I do. I also found out that Don Phillips was part of Stephen Greer's 2001 press conference. So if you want to go back and watch that, that's where we see like Dr. Carol Rosen for the first time. Heaps of people who have been in this space were also back there in 2001 saying the same things. And Don Phillips is one of them. So you can go and check that out as well if you want to see more from him. But some of the key things from that video that I wrote down was that he says from the Skunk Works, the CIA was one of their best customers, and the CIA has one of the best air forces. Like, what does that even mean? Technology from the SR-71 Blackbird came from outside planet Earth. Now, the SR-71 flew for the first time, the first flight in 1964. So, I would assume that developing a plane like that could take the better part of maybe 10 years. So we're looking at early 50s, not long after Roswell happened. I mean, these things all make sense, right? The propulsion, so when he's talking about anti-gravity, he's saying it's designed to repel, so the craft is designed to repel itself off of the natural force of the Earth. So rather than like rather than thrusting forward, it's like bouncing back, if that makes sense. Fiber optics, I think Kevlar as well is another thing that is, told to be from extraterrestrial craft. Interesting as well how he says they've passed on from their earthly bodies when he's talking about people that he knew who worked in the program. Now, he's either a spiritual person or maybe he knows something. Maybe he knows that our consciousness is just a signal and our bodies are a receiver for that consciousness. That's certainly something that feels right to me. People and beings from outside this planet have been here for a long time. Now, this is something we're starting to hear more and more, and something we're going to get into a little bit later after this segment. And he says that these craft were piloted, not with a steering wheel or anything, but just with like a flat console where a hand is placed, and the craft is piloted by the combination of your thoughts and your consciousness and hand movements. And using these two things in sync is how the craft moves. And this is essentially what Bob Lazar said back in the 80s about his time at S4 and looking at these craft as well. It's to do with consciousness, and maybe that's becoming very clear. This whole phenomenon has some kind of connection to our consciousness. So look, I'm sounding like a broken record now because like Lockheed Martin Skunk Works have the answers. This is clear. If you haven't watched last week's episode, watch that and watch today, and I think you'll be at the same conclusion that I am now. So like this technology, it's not just non-human intelligence that they have at the Skunk Works, but it sounds like they are beginning to understand like the true nature of reality and what it means to be human. Like I think they understand the fundamental nature of reality, and I think that's why you're getting some people who with a good conscience that are now whistleblowing and coming forward saying that we all deserve to know the truth of the world that we live in, right? So I want to take you guys on a little trip with me. I've made a little slideshow for this next part. I'm really excited for it because there is so much truth that is hidden in plain sight. Okay, so let's check this out. So within the Air Force, I mean, we know how compartmentalized the Air Force and the government is, right? So within the Air Force, you've got many different departments and divisions and whatever. Okay, so one of these many departments is called the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. And within this Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, there is another whole bunch of departments. One of them is called the Fighters and Advanced Aircraft Directorate. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So this department is ran by Brigadier General Jason Voorhees, and it is ran out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, you know, you probably see where this is going, right? Wright-Patterson. This is the department we're going to be looking at today. Now, again, within this department, there's a whole bunch of other departments. Compartmentalization. So they run the F-15 division, F-22 division, the F-16, the A-10. Basically, you can see on these mission statements here that I might just move my camera so you can see it clearly, but you can see on all of these mission statements here that the general idea for this department is to maintain mission combat ready aircraft and make sure that the Air Force's craft, they're responsible for making sure that all of their arsenal is kind of ready to go, ready to fire, operating without issues at all times. Okay, so this is what they're looking after here. Then there's two other divisions. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. The first one, and again, this is all public knowledge. You can go and look this up yourself. The first one is the Advanced Aircraft Division, where their mission is to continuously delivering advanced and innovative capabilities through parallel development, optionality, and competition to deter and defeat threats. Now that is interesting, and we're going to dig into that. But this one is the wild one, and the badge itself is, okay, we'll get into it. Okay, this is what it says. Special Programs Division. Rapidly execute streamlined demonstrations, development, test, production, fielding, and sustainment of classified weapon systems to maintain the nation's lethal strike capability in contested environments. Now that, I mean, you know, nothing sounds too weird about that, but wait till we get into the badge. I mean, you can probably see already how weird it is. So let's look at this one first. Now, at the top, you've got Latin, which is a bit of a common theme. Like when you look at, I mean, the United States are known for weird patches. If you've ever looked into the NROL patches, which is the National Reconnaissance Office, and the satellites that they launch, the mission patches for some of these objects that are being, well, satellites that are being put into space to orbit the Earth are just straight up weird. Like there's only two answers. Like either the United States are just like taking the piss out of conspiracy theorists and trying to like stir up conspiracies, or there's something weird going on. So, and a lot of Latin writing. There's some weird connection to Latin there. Now, this is the Advanced Aircraft Division. Now, if you've got a keen eye, you would have noticed that on the first patch that we looked at, there was a similar shape here. This sort of arrowhead looking shape, this diamond with a little sort of square at the base. You can see that that is on the tip of the Fighters and Advanced Aircraft badge. And I believe, and I'm going to show you why, that this diamond represents an advanced aircraft that we aren't told about, that we don't know, that the United States Air Force operates, and that the two different designs below that, the sort of triangular boomerang shape and the cross shape on the Fighters and Advanced Aircraft badge, also represent other craft that either are still being used, or what is more likely, I think what you can see on this badge is like a linear timeline representation of the advancement and development of these advanced aircraft. Okay, so let's look at why I think that. Now, a few weeks ago on Weird Week, we looked at, YouTuber Strange Mysteries was getting emails from an anonymous whistleblower who was sending him photos of UAPs. Now, look, again, this is the UFO space. A lot of this stuff is unverified. So just because something is unverified or someone is anonymous, you don't just discount it, okay? You need to look at the independent corroborating testimony across the world, and you start to realize that there are trends and patterns here, okay? And that's what we can see here. So we also looked at this, we looked at a clip from 1967, which is what you can see there, which is a screenshot from 2 police officers in Devon in the UK who draw an aircraft that they saw that they said was just hovering, rapidly accelerating. You know, this is in the late 60s. Like, this thing was doing things that they just couldn't even wrap their head around at the time. Now, this also looks exactly like one of the UFOs that came up in Strange Mysteries leaks, and it matches what's on the aircraft. And again, linear representation of time. This was a sighting in the 60s. Perhaps this was a shape of maybe an unmanned vehicle. I don't know, but some kind of aircraft based on extraterrestrial technology that somewhere deep within the US military industrial complex were operating. Then we go up to the next generation. We've got the boomerang triangular shape looking craft. Now, again, this shape was cited in the Strange Mysteries UAP leaks. It also is representative of what was seen in 1997 in the Phoenix Lights. Now, in that sighting, specifically the Phoenix Lights, a lot of people alleged that this craft was like enormous. Like, I mean, there were reports of it being like hundreds of meters long, wide. So, I mean, again, that it becomes hard to believe, hard to digest that United States have something that could fly like that silently, slowly over a city. And perhaps the Phoenix Lights itself wasn't the United States. But as we just saw from Don Phillips, a lot of our technology that we don't know about, that's classified, is based off of these extraterrestrial concepts, shapes, and designs, right? And then that brings us to more of the modern day, which is this sort of arrowhead craft that we see. Now, Ross Coulthart, he wrote a book called In Plain Sight. I'd highly recommend you read it. He also covers this story in a Channel 7 news documentary, which you can watch on YouTube. So at Exmouth Military Base, which is actually called Harold Holt Naval Communications Station, which is based in Exmouth in northwestern Western Australia. We'll have a look at that in a sec. I mean, the place itself is just wild looking. And it's like, not many people even know it exists. I know people who are into the UFO space who, when I showed them this, they're like, damn, I've never even heard of this place. So in Ross Coulthart's book, he talks about this witness here, Annie Farinaccio, and she lives in Exmouth. She's just a local. So going out and interacting with people who work at this base is kind of normal for them. And it's a lot of Americans. Like, this is a US base within Australia. And she has a sighting of being, I think she was driving either towards or near the base late at night with 2 police officers. From memory, I haven't watched it recently, but from memory, she was sitting in a middle seat with a driver and passenger on either side. And they spotted a craft right above their car. And that's what it looked like. So you can see there, it's got that same kind of shape. It's got that like sort of flat back end with a pointy front diamond. This was right near Exmouth Military Base, and she said that the craft was just hovering silently. It shot up into space at crazy speed, and then came straight back down like 100 meters in front of them, like over there instantly. Okay. Now, you could say that the shape isn't exactly the same, and it isn't. You can see at the back of this badge, it's more of like a square that cuts out of the diamond, whereas she's drawn it as more of just like a straight line. Now, the only difference there is like, that much. Rather than like a straight line, it's like a little bit of a cutout. She saw this at night, and she said the craft was black. So I think a small detail like that, like just some little edges being a little bit off of a black craft against a black night sky, I mean, I think you can sort of understand that perhaps she's maybe seeing the same thing, especially given all of the previous evidence that we've just looked at as well. So I found that super interesting. I feel like this badge is telling us a story. Now we get to the just outright weirdness, okay? It's like they're just waving this shit in front of our face. Whether they do it intentionally, I don't know why they do it like this, but they do. Okay, this is the badge for the Special Programs Division. This is open source public information. You can find this on the United States Air Force website. So there is a lot to break down here. So let's get into it. First of all, the impossible on demand, miracles by appointment. Like, that is just a very interesting and strange choice of words, don't you think? Especially miracles. Miracles by appointment. As, like, when we consider that a lot of this alien craft, alien technology, to us regular ape human eyes, it seems like magic. All right, these things are zipping away instantly, coming in and out of water, roiling like the sun. Like, it's just stuff that we don't even understand. So, look, that's the text, but we can move on from that. That's just weird. So let's look at what's actually on the badge. First of all, we've got the B-2 bomber. Okay, this is a public knowledge plane that came out of the Skunk Works years ago. Not too interesting, but it's worth noting, right? But what else is on there? We can see that the B-2 bomber is flying over North America. We can see South America there. We can see, I guess, like the rest of Europe and Africa on the right-hand side. But flying over America, we see these triangular shaped, you have to assume that they're aircraft, right? I mean, like, what else? It's over the top of the land. And, what else? What else is doing that? And, when there's so much triangular, diamond-looking shaped craft that we've been looking at, I think it's safe to assume that these probably represent craft that are coming out of that advanced aircraft division, especially the triangular shape and the arrowhead thing that we just looked at, right? Let me get this out of the way a little bit. Okay. So now look, obviously I've just pulled up some of the things that we've looked at in this episode. I guess the Calvine UFO photo is a pretty close match, perhaps. The drawing from Annie from Exmouth as well, kind of a similar match. Maybe these two craft, the roiling like the sun ones, you could argue are maybe not the closest match, but what isn't really up for dispute is triangular shaped aircraft, right? These things are seen all over ufology sightings, okay? And like I said, I think a lot of those sightings are deep black, Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, secret aircraft. And on the right-hand side, I pulled up this image from a TikTok that I came across. I just came across this TikTok, and there was one aircraft on it that immediately I was like, it triggered something in me, okay? And we're going to get into that in a minute. That's not why we've brought it up here. But you can see here, the first one is the TR-3C, and we've also got the TR-5A. So I guess these are like potentially advanced concepts based on the TR-3B, which is pretty common knowledge at this point. Again, none of this is confirmed. This is, I can't tell you that these are real. But again, it's just about corroborating lots of different evidence from all over the place. Now, I reached out to this person on TikTok because they had like no caption. There was not really any information about this photo. It was just kind of there. So I reached out to them to ask where they found it, and they never got back to me. So unfortunately, I can't really tell you any more about where it's from. But just kind of showing you that triangular craft, advanced aircraft in the Air Force, all these things relate. So what's next? The 5 stars. Now, I tried to think of some things that this could represent, right? And the first thing that came to me was the Five Eyes Alliance. If you don't know what Five Eyes is, it's a publicly, open domain acknowledged treaty between the United States, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada as a joint intelligence treaty. So they all share information and intelligence. And I guess that's why you have like Harold Holt Naval Communications Base in Exmouth in Australia, which is entirely ran by the United States, because these countries, they all work together. And it also kind of makes sense when we look at those advanced aircraft from earlier, the chandelier spiky looking ones that were sighted in the UK in the 60s. Well, the UK is part of the Five Eyes. Perhaps there are aircraft being operated there that people don't know about. And also Australia. We had that, the Diamond craft in Exmouth, right near Exmouth Military Base, which is a highly sensitive, classified military space, part of the Five Eyes. And, these shapes are being seen there. So I think these 5 stars could represent 5 eyes. But then there's a 6th star that you can see shooting around and kind of breaking away. What does that mean? Is there a sixth entity as part of this alliance? Is this entity a breakaway group? Is this entity leading the group? Do they represent the body that these five eyes reside on? I don't know. I know that this kind of 5 stars and a separate 6-1 is also seen in a lot of Area 51 patches. Like, this isn't just exclusive to this patch. It's seen around a lot of suspect operations and things. Okay, we'll call it that. So what's next? There's binary code on the right hand side. This binary translates to 777. Now, I genuinely have no idea what this could mean, but I wanted to at least throw out some suggestions. And as always, guys, if you think of something that I'm saying is like wrong, or you have a different idea, tell me. I'm always open to being proven wrong. Just don't act like a dickhead. Like, there's a difference between coming in the comments and having a go at me for giving my opinions, or just citing your own. And I enjoy discussion. I really enjoy going back and forth about stuff. So I'm down to chat. But if you're gonna, come across like a bit of a tool, I might just remove the comment, because I have replied to some people who have kind of come across like a dick, but ultimately it just kind of leaves me with like this weird, like uncomfortable energy feeling that I'm like engaging in that. So I think I'll just remove like people behaving like assholes, because ultimately this channel is to kind of spread like a positive message and awareness, and like kind of wake people up to some things that are going on around the world. So yeah, that was a tangent, but that's what'll be happening. Anyway, binary code 777. The casino is like 777 is like the jackpot number. Lucky, maybe something has to do with luck here. 777 also has a religious context as representing the Holy Trinity, so the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There is like cultural connections there with certain cultures, that it's like a representation of like perfection, completedness, and like good luck. Angel numbers 777, like is this representing the idea of like some kind of divine intervention within this program, or this program can deliver what comes across as divine intervention, a miracle by appointment? I don't know. And 777, like a triple threat capability. I mean, that one's I don't know, kind of a random one. That's why it's got 2 question marks next to it. But maybe they're operating on like space, land, and sea, air, air. I know. I'm spitballing here. All right, let me know what you think about that. So now let's get to the elephant in the room. There are red, oval-shaped, alien-looking eyes. Okay, like we could say they're obviously eyes. I mean, if you don't think they're eyes and you have a better idea, hey, please tell me in the comments. But to me, we're looking at red, oval-shaped eyes, and I'll tell you why. I mean, this is only the start of it. This is about to get way weirder, way weirder. Okay, so we've got some red, oval-shaped eyes there. We've also got a dagger, okay, that's striking like somewhere in South America that looks like Brazil. But look at what's holding the dagger. This is clearly something holding the dagger, but that's not an arm. Doesn't look like a hand. Doesn't look like any conventional thing that would grip a dagger, right? It's just something that's wrapped around the dagger and is striking South America. Okay, so I think this represents some kind of underwater base or landmass at the very least. So, and the reason why I think that is a few things. First of all, well, I'll start with this. First of all, underwater bases around this part of the world and then on the other side of America are being talked about. Okay, people like Danny Sheehan, who we're going to hear from soon, has talked about this. USOs, non-human intelligence residing underwater, is becoming part of the common narrative. And we seem to see all of this phenomena around America. Okay, so again, just trying to connect some dots here. And then from a visual perspective, it also makes sense, because if in this image, the land is white, so the land on the surface is white and the ocean is black, land that kind of sits below the ocean, it would make sense for the white color to be washed out with black as like a combination of the two, right? That just makes sense from like a design perspective. This is also right where the Bermuda Triangle is. And it's also right where the 4chan whistleblower leaker who talked about underwater bases, UFOs, specifically referred to a giant structure that resides around the Bermuda Triangle that moves. He referred to it as a mobile construction unit that can move, that is massive, and it generally doesn't leave the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, this, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this was someone an anonymous person who came out on 4chan about a year ago with some wild statements. Maybe I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. If I forget and you want to see it, just comment below and I'll add it in. I'll give you a quick overview of that, but it was basically just a whistleblower came out and said that he's willing to tell what he knows up until the last 2 years. So that would be up until 2021 because he's no longer in the program. And he's speaking out because he doesn't really care about repercussions because he had, I believe it was lung cancer and he was going to die soon. And obviously it could just be a LARP, but you know, the way the questions were answered in this thing were really interesting. You know, like he didn't just embellish every question. He didn't just, you know, there were plenty of things where he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't really know about that. Or I can't really answer that because I wasn't involved in that area. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't just going ham on wild conspiracy theories. He really stayed in his lane. He sounded knowledgeable. Didn't really sound like he was trying to gain anything from it. And he essentially said, well, not essentially, he said that you will be able to verify everything that I say in the next few years when all of this comes out. Okay, so this was from 2023. So I'll try and leave a link to that in the show description because it's honestly really interesting to check out. And on top of that, look, there's just a big connection with UFOs and the water. I mean, we realize that now. That's becoming very obvious. Now, looking at where this dagger is striking specifically is a whole nother can of worms. Okay, it's striking in Brazil. And let me move my camera again. Specifically the state of Mato Grosso. And let me pull this up. Actually, that reminds me, we were supposed to do this earlier. We talked about Exmouth military base before, and I didn't actually show you how weird it is. So I'm going to show you Exmouth military base in Australia, and then I'm just going to pull up where Mato Grosso is in Brazil, just so you can kind of get your bearings, okay? So let's just turn that off for a sec. Okay. I'm sorry, Google Earth wasn't open, but it's opening. Again, bear with me. Remember I said we might have a few technical difficulties here? It's my first day on the job, you know? Now this should be showing up, but it isn't. Don't worry, we're going to get there. You know, like if you were at a restaurant and someone was serving you and they said it's their first time and they royally fucked up, would you have a go at them? You wouldn't. You'd let them off. Okay? That's what you need to do with me. Let me off. We're in this together. And look, let me just, you know, make it nice. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That's beautiful. Okay. So, we're looking at, first of all, Harold Holt Naval Communication Station in Australia. This is like a highly secretive and sensitive military base in the northwest of Western Australia. Yes. Will you take me there? Okay. I'm gonna have to do it myself. That's fine. So check this out. Look at how weird this place is. So it's on the very tip of the western coast. Like you can't really get any further west than this. But look at this thing, man. Look at this base. What is going on there? Now, I think we can get a better perspective here. God damn. Now, from what I understand as well, each of these corners here, like here, 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 they all have massive towers, like huge, huge towers that are obviously part of their communications systems. But something we're about to watch later will confirm this. And I think that's quite clear here because other than that, right? I mean, what else is on the surface here? Like, what? You think that's the whole base? You think this is the beginning and end of Harold Holt Naval Communication Stations? No, this thing is underground. You go in that door and you go into a trap door and you go down probably a long, long way. Because, I mean, you know, that is clear, right? But anyway, back to where we were. We're at Mato Grosso, and you know, I thought, oh, there we go. I've worked it out now. So this is a state in Brazil, and this is, I'm gonna have to fix up the perspective here. This is exactly where that dagger is landing. Okay, so let me just put this over here for a second. Okay, so we can see that this here, where that kind of square is going over, is Mato Grosso. Now let's pull up our slideshow again. We're gonna have to boost to where we were. Right, so you can see there where that dagger is landing is pretty much Mato Grosso. What's interesting about Mato Grosso, you might say? Well, okay, let's get rid of that now. There we go. Right, Mato Grosso is a Brazilian town that is famous for celebrating UFOs and aliens that have red eyes. Okay, this is like a cultural thing in this town. Okay, so the town is Barra de Garças. I know I've butchered that. You don't need to tell me. I'm doing my best. I live in Australia. I'm trying my best. Barra de Garças in Mato Grosso. Okay, so this is a little town, a rural town in this part of Brazil where this dagger is pointing. The dagger that is above red alien eyes is pointing to a town in Brazil that openly celebrates UFOs and red-eyed aliens. Okay, so this town has dedicated, I think it was like 5 hectares or something, as a, like, I think it's like a bit of a joke, but they have dedicated this land to it, 5 hectares of like a UFO car park, they call it, or like a, you know, interplanetary interchange or something like that for UFOs to come and land. And they have all of these things there, like, you know, these cutouts that you can get photos with and, you know, pretend UFOs and these aliens that are all depicted the same way with red eyes. I mean, what is going on here? Seriously. Now, when you first saw the red eyes, if you hang around in the UFO space and you're up to date, you might have thought about the Varginha incident in 1996. Now, this is widely documented in the Moment of Contact documentary by James Fox, which is a great documentary. Varginha isn't too far away from this place. I wouldn't say it's like close by, but it's not like on the other side of the country or anything like that. It's pretty close. And essentially, I think I've talked about this documentary a bit before, but it's about a case where there was a crash in Varginha and there were reports of aliens walking around the town essentially afterwards. And you know, there was all of a sudden a huge military presence in the area that kind of cordoned off this section of the city. And the girl that you see there in the bottom right, she and 2 others together at the same time saw this creature. And that's her there in 1996 when it happened. And that's her today, or when this documentary was filmed, you know, 30 years later, sticking true to her story completely. She's a grown woman now, obviously, and that is a artistic depiction of what she saw. So that's kind of the picture that's used through the documentary as, like, you know, the most accurate rendition of what they looked like. And yeah, it's described as something with red eyes. Again, I don't want to tell you what to think of that, and I'm not telling you this with like an answer of like, yeah, that's the same alien on the badge, but I'm just trying to point some things out for you. Like, look, this stuff is fucking weird. It's crazy. Now, to tie this all back to the, you know, Advanced Aircraft Division that's ran out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I think, and I could be wrong on this, so if anyone's actually seen the documentary recently or knows the case well, feel free to correct me here, but I know that the United States came and took this alien body because someone, a Brazilian soldier, intercepted this alien, and the reports are that he just grabbed it with his bare hands, got in a car, and they took it to like a hospital or something like that to be like examined. That person who did that died. from coming into contact with this thing, like touching it. He died. It's not really clear why. I guess some kind of like virus or disease. But after this thing was being x-rayed in this hospital for a day or two, it may have even been less than that, the United States came, chucked it on a jet, and took it back to America. I think it's said in the documentary that it's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that they go to. But I could be wrong about that. So anyone wants to fact check me, go ahead. And also just an interesting fact that the hospital that this thing stayed at, they said it just reeked like ammonia, like the strongest, most disgusting rank smell for like weeks. And like despite like deep cleaning it and all this kind of stuff, they just couldn't get rid of it. Yeah, wild. So that's the end of my little slideshow about that. I mean, it's just crazy how much seems to be hidden in plain sight. Like I said, these badges, they're all on like the Air Force website. It's just weird. I mean, I don't know. I want you to make your own mind up. If you take this if you interpret this differently, let me know in the comments, because I mean, I'm just trying to connect some dots here. But anyway, let's move into the next one. So, that wasn't supposed to be there. What are you still doing there? So, you might have heard, and we covered this, I think, 2 weeks ago, that Stephen Greer has come out and, actually, I think we have some Greer content here. Stephen Greer has come out in the last couple of weeks and basically said that he has whistleblowers from within these black projects who are first-hand, hands-on, reverse engineering people who are coming forward within the next few weeks. And he said this a few weeks ago, and it feels like this is meant to be happening like any day now. Now, I've heard, I don't know if it's specifically related to this, but I've heard something is big is meant to happen on the 1st of January. I don't really know, but I think by the middle of January, something is definitely meant to be coming out, and it's meant to be big. So this is what Stephen Greer has been telling us. Now, he kind of combined that information with the release of his documentary. Now, you might think that's kind of weird. I believe a lot of what Stephen Greer says. I do. And I'm, of course, like you all should be, I'm open to it not being the case though, because this, this water is murky with everyone. But I do believe a lot of what he says. But I also agree with many people that a lot of the things he does, not necessarily about the things he says, but the things he does seem weird. So first of all, he does these CE5 things where you can go and meditate with him and summon these orbs. But he charges like $3,000 to go and do it. Like, that's a lot of money. And like, is it weird to like monetize this truth in a way, or to at least such a degree? Like, I can understand maybe like charging $10-15 for a documentary or whatever, even though when I already pay a monthly subscription to Amazon, I still have to pay an additional $10 or $15. I don't really agree with that, but I'm okay with that. But $3,000 to go and summon orbs with him in the desert, whether it's actually real or not, I don't know, but that just feels weird. And this Battle for Disclosure documentary wasn't really talked about too much that it was coming out. It was kind of low key, and he kind of just like dropped it without that much notice. But he dropped it like a week before James Fox's documentary, The Program, came out. And that had like months and months of build up. Like everyone was waiting for it. Everyone knew it was coming. And then Greer just like slipped in the week before and was just like, nah, watch mine instead. I don't know. That's just how it kind of came across to me. Again, that could just be my interpretation of things. But yeah. That's something that I thought was weird. So something could be happening on the 1st of January. We've got Trump's inauguration on the 6th of January, and he's potentially going to be appointing Lou Elizondo as like some kind of head or position to run like a new government UAP department. Now, I don't think that's like official yet, but that is being spoken about. Give me one sec. Okay. So, part of Stephen Greer's whole thing, his most recent press conference was in 2023, where he brought witnesses forward such as Michael Herrera. Sorry, Michael, you're a bit smaller than I'd imagined. Yeah, look, that's the best I can do. Michael Herrera, who you see here, that's him on the Sean Ryan show, but he came with a testimony in 2023 that I feel like it's just one of the most interesting and groundbreaking testimonies that, I mean, it's talked about, but I don't think it's talked about enough. Okay, so I'll give you a brief rundown if you don't know it, but I'm going to leave you links to go and check it out if you don't, because I think what's about to come out through Stephen Greer and Michael Herrera, what I'm about to tell you about, it has to do with his testimony, and it's allegedly corroborating a lot of what he says and confirming it. And what he says is insane. Okay, so Michael Herrera was a U.S. Marine, and in 2009 he was deployed to Sumatra in Indonesia as part of a humanitarian aid flood relief program. So there was a massive flood in Sumatra, and the U.S. military were kind of there, I think, to kind of ensure that foreign aid that was being given to Indonesia by other countries wasn't being like intercepted by, rogue pirates, entities, terrorists or whatever. Like this aid was actually getting to the people and it was actually helping them. Okay. So the brief idea of the story is that Michael and a small group, I think like 2 or 3 others, were sort of off in the Sumatran sort of jungle area doing their thing. And they went up above a clearing. And once they got over this jungle clearing, he said it stuck out like a sore thumb because it's just jungle everywhere, that there was a massive black craft about 10 or 20 meters off the ground. And he estimates it at about 300, either 300 feet or 300 meters. I can't quite remember. It's not too important. What is important is it's huge. And it was silent. The only audible noise was like the hum of an electric guitar amp. If you've ever played electric guitar and the amp's just sitting on, you can just kind of hear that electrical hum, very subtle. That's what he described this as. So obviously like this kind of like shook them. And as they approached it, this is an artistic, again, this needs to be bigger. Hang on. I want to get this bigger because it's worth looking at. Okay, so that's a depiction of the craft. Kind of like octagonal. He said it was pulsating between the skin of the craft. Again, yeah, roiling like the sun. He said the skin of the craft was pulsating between like a matte light gray to a dark matte black, just kind of slowly going in and out of these colors, slowly rotating as well, and just staying there in position. And he said that once they got there, they were spotted by these men wearing black camo, like completely unmarked camouflage gear. And they were essentially intercepted. They were like immediately kind of like flanked and surrounded and completely outnumbered. And these US Marines were then like not taken hostage, but they were like threatened. They were made to like guns on the ground, ammo taken out, providing documentation and ID of who they were. And obviously, while this is happening, I guess Michael Herrera and co are, probably thinking, what the hell is going on here? Look, I just want to put him there because it's this guy's story. Okay, so I'm just going to sit him over here. It's his story, not mine. So as this is happening, as they're getting, strip searched essentially, he's watching these trucks pulling these shipping container like things on a trailer onto a platform that's below this craft and just kind of unloading it. So over time, as this is happening, these trucks are just unloading containers on this platform below the craft. And eventually the platform slowly elevated and met this craft, almost as if the floor of the craft was taken down, loaded with cargo, and then just lifted up to meet the base of the craft. Obviously, that sounds crazy. I understand that doesn't make sense, but this is the testimony of a US Marine who has had, from his account, since speaking out about this, black choppers hovering 10 meters above his house and rattling his doors and windows. Okay, so he is under like threat and pressure for coming out about this. Now, what's interesting about this story, the story is just wildly interesting in itself, but these whistleblowers through Michael Herrera and Stephen Greer that are coming forward are allegedly the people who worked in this program. And after hearing this testimony, now I don't know if it's like this operation specifically, but they know what, like, they're the people that know what's going on with these people and who they are and what they're doing. And after hearing Michael Herrera's testimony, they, I guess, like, unanimously just like agreed that they wanted to like come forward. And Stephen Greer says that these people feel trapped, like they kind of can't get out of these programs because, you know, I guess it's almost kind of like a, you know, like a cult or a gang in a way that, like, once you know too much, if you leave, it's like a threat. It's like a danger to the whole thing. So these people came forward, well, they're coming forward, and, you know, they, from what I understand, they have realized that what they've been doing at the beginning, these people are senior, sorry, by the way, these people have been in it for like decades. And they, in the beginning, thought they were kind of like, you know, doing the right thing, you know, kind of working in the shadows to benefit humanity. But over time, they've begun to realize that like what they're doing is just like highly illegal, and they're doing unethical things, and they're just kind of realizing that they've been misled and lied to, and that the people above them are, I mean, these aren't my words, these are his words, evil. Okay, there is like some kind of evil, sinister part to this, right? And that these people have a stranglehold on certain people in the White House to stop this ever coming forward. Okay, and I guess that's got that gives credit to like the friction that we see in like the Congress and trying to bring this stuff out. It doesn't seem easy. So there's some extra details that came out about this on Chris Lado's podcast. So this is like a bit of a creator shout out. I'll be leaving that in the description. Chris Lado is an ex F-16 fighter pilot in the US Air Force. He's retired now. And I've been following, I watched Chris's very first video. So if some strange way Chris ever gets to see this, I've been watching since day one, and it's really cool. Because I think Chris got into this after the 2017 Pentagon UFO videos. Okay, I don't think he's never a UFO guy. He was a pilot who never had any of his own experiences, but hearing all these things from other pilot perspectives got him deep into this. And now he's got a huge channel. He makes really cool videos. So if you're interested in that, check it out. Links in the description. But yeah, Michael Herrera in this podcast, I won't spoil it for you, but he did say that he has met up with these people now who are involved in this, and they took him in a helicopter to go and look at some of these bases where he's been told that they use them to down ET craft to reverse engineer. So they're shooting down ET craft, and that he said that after seeing what he saw, which he couldn't disclose, he realized that this is what he said: everything critical to this world is not on the surface; it's underground. That's pretty much all he said. And I mean, we know that like deep underground military bases, tunnel networks throughout America, like this is a thing that is common. Again, like this is all about looking at trends and things that relate and connecting dots. Like these are all things that make sense in this space. Okay, and I think we're going to find out a lot more about what's going on there, and I think it's going to, I think shit will hit the fan. I think it'll probably fracture society, to be honest. But you know, which it sounds horrible to say this is going to fracture society and to like in the same breath be kind of like excited for it. But I think we can all agree that, you know, there's something fundamentally wrong with society. I mean, just look at the world around us. Half the world's in poverty. We're throwing nuclear weapons at each other. Like something is wrong here. We can agree that that's obvious, yeah? So if you have this house that's built on crooked foundations, you're never going to be able to straighten up that house, right? You need to knock it down and you need to build a new one. And when you build a new one, you need to take into consideration what went wrong the first time and not make those mistakes again. And I think in 2025, that's what we're going to see. Now, just quickly before we end this segment, I'm going to pull this up again because, as I said earlier, there was an aircraft on this image that piqued my interest straight away, and that it looks exactly like the aircraft that Michael Herrera describes. So let me just grab this. You can see there. Oh, okay. Come on. There we go. So we've got this one here on the left. It's called the 09G, the second one down. And Michael Herrera described this thing as being 300 feet wide. This labels it as a 230-foot craft, so pretty close. I mean, it doesn't really give us like much more information or anything interesting that we can work off, but it's also black. And this artistic depiction that I think was like commissioned by Michael is gray. And he said that it was changing between gray and black. So look, I just thought this was super interesting. I don't know where this image came from, so I can't verify it. But again, just pulling, that's what I do. I weave things together that make sense to me and I show you guys. And then you guys can either tell me if I'm an idiot or if you think there's something to it too. All right. So now let's get on to what I think is like the meat of this video. We've already been running a long time, but we're going to now talk about the truth that is apparently too terrible to ever be told. Okay, so the truth that's too terrible to be told. This is something that came from an article that came out earlier this year. So the article wasn't written by Nick Pope, but it was about things that Nick Pope had come out and said, and things that he'd spoken about. So look, we need to go back here. I'm sorry. Michael, what are you doing here? Your time's over. Okay, so we're going to be talking about terrible truth. We're going to be talking about Nick Pope and how this all started. Okay, so this is Nick Pope, and this is the article that I'm kind of basing this segment off of. So this article says there's fears that the imminent alien announcement, so again, we're already assuming that there is an alien announcement coming, but it could contain a truth that's too terrible to be told. So Nick Pope is a former employee of the UK's Ministry of Defence and was specifically tasked with investigating the UFO phenomena. Okay, so again, Nick is quite like all of the people who know, like they don't tell you, but they kind of dance around the idea, they allude to things and suggest things. And that's what this segment is going to be all about. We're going to be looking at videos. I've got about 5 or 6 different videos from people with similar sort of credibility. And we're going to be listening to their takes on the situation and what the truth is and why it could be so terrible. And then after we've looked at all of them, we're going to finish up by telling you exactly what I think. All right. So just a couple of things from this article that I'll tell you about. So Professor Simon Holland, who was in communication with Nick Pope, said that the insights Nick Pope shared with him were deeply disturbing. It's not the first time we've heard that. Jimmy Carter. Nick Pope says that he believed, past tense, that people were ready for disclosure, but after what he saw in the reaction to how the public handled COVID, he reconsiders and he feels that he overestimated society's resilience. So there's that. He suggests that the reality, or our reality, might be an advanced simulation created by higher beings, somewhat similar to a video game. And I've sort of touched on this simulation theory before. I think it's actually a pretty credible theory, but I feel like when people hear that, like, oh, we live in a simulation, like they think like maybe like The Sims, like we're just Sims, or maybe like The Matrix or something, which I feel like the Matrix movie is maybe a bit more closer rather than just thinking we are a literal video game. I just think the name simulation is the closest human word that we have to kind of describe, grasp, and understand what that potential truth could be. Okay, so I think it's probably something more from like an esoteric kind of perspective, such as our higher selves and our connected consciousness is projected onto or into the earth, or it even exists maybe within this planet, and the signals that are coming from that projection are picked up by our bodies. Okay, so this is just like our human interface or avatar that exists in the third dimension in 3D space that allows us, our consciousness or our souls, to have a human experience. But look, I don't want to get into my theories too much yet because I want to listen to everyone else first, and then I'll kind of tell you what I think. Now, again, just I said this earlier, but a quick copyright warning. If I say we're about to watch a video and then you don't see it appear, it's because I got copyright strike, but I think I'll be okay with these. I'm learning the ropes. I'm still new to YouTube, but I think we're going to be okay with these. So the first video that we're going to look at is from Kirk McConnell. Now, he is a retired member of the Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committee, And this is him on a podcast speaking about his reaction and the others who were in the room with him's reaction after they were briefed on what the truth actually is. Oh, that's Nick Pope. That's not Kirk McConnell.
Well, James,
Here you
I don't think in a way that it's very hard to imagine. It's certainly I speak to myself. What was going through my mind is shock and kind of reeling. It's a very it's a tough thing to get your mind around, and to be confronted with it. Coming from another person whom you find credible based on their credentials and their clearances and their background and all that. It certainly it makes it hard to go to sleep at night. For a good while.
What did the senators? Did they have a sort of slack-jawed appearance as well, or was it just?
No, I mean, I don't think any of us fell on the floor, in anguish or anything, but it was very serious, very sobering, and there was, just rapt attention to what was being said and trying to absorb it. They would take this information on board.
Did you get the impression that these individuals were scared?
Well, it varied. Certainly in some instances, some people, there was real fear. Yes, there was real.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't expect that to end so soon. Where am I? Hello. So, Kirk McConnell, again, I feel like that is just so interesting and so compelling. Like, there seems to be this theme that is just, the truth is so shocking. It's hard to digest. It's scary. It always seems like there's this, I think not being able to sleep at night is like a common theme we hear. Now that could just be an expression, but what that actually means is that I believe that there is this lingering fear of something that could happen at any moment. That's how I interpret that. Something that's completely out of our hands, like it's non-human. So let's look at the next one. We're going to be looking at Lou Elizondo. I'm sure we all know him pretty well. This is like a little compilation. It only goes for 2 minutes of just some of the interesting things that he's said over time.
If the general public knew or saw what you saw, what would the next week look like? How would the public react?
Somber. I think there would be this big exhale for about a day. And then this turning inward and trying to reflect on what this means to us and our species and ourselves.
Imagine everything you've been taught about who we are, right? And our background and our past. What if all of that turned out to be not entirely accurate? Hypothetically, imagine a scenario where maybe we had 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat's out of the bag, that existential action will happen tomorrow. And by the way, we're not ready for it. We're not prepared for it. The time has come. We need to start having the conversation collectively. The meaning, what it means to be a human being and our place in this universe. What if it turns out that a lot of the things that we thought were one way aren't? Are we prepared to have that honest question with ourselves? Mankind's been around for a little while. For most of that time, mankind's been around. We've been smack in the middle of the food chain. About 70,000 years ago, something fundamentally changed. Our species was instantly catapulted to the very top. And now all of a sudden, we became the most feared. We were the most lethal. Most of the large species that existed on this planet went extinct because of us. What if it turns out that there's another species that is even higher on that ladder than we are? We really need to start having a conversation. Do we need the social institutions? Will we need governmental and religious organizations if it turns out that there is something else or someone else that is technologically more advanced and perhaps from an evolutionary perspective more advanced? Maybe we're just another exhibit inside the zoo.
Just because I have cancer, it's bad news. Don't keep that from me. I want to know, because maybe there's a chance I can do something about it.
There's going to come a point in this conversation where we're going to have to do a lot of reconciling with ourselves.
Time is not a luxury that we can afford.
Again, more compelling stuff. Lou is obviously someone who, I guess, has learned the truth, but believes the people deserve to know. But you can see there that, he says it might be tough to swallow for some people. It might shake things up a little bit. But as I said, maybe that's actually for the better. I feel like sometimes in life, what's necessary or what's good for you might not always feel right at the time. You might have to go through some hard times, some heartache, a few rough moments, but overall the way you come out of that is going to be much better. So I feel like maybe that's something that could apply to this. So next one we're going to look at is John Ramirez.
It is my personal belief that there are residents.
Come on, John. All right. So John Ramirez, this is just a real quick one. You can see there it says he was a GS-15 ex-CIA officer. He's retired now. GS-15 is like the top pay scale for like a government position, at least in the United States. I don't know if that extends anywhere else, but GS-15 is like reserved for the top dogs, and John Ramirez was that, but also Lou Elizondo was as well. So Lou Elizondo was also a GS-15 during his time at the Pentagon. So let's listen to John Ramirez here. Let me just get the volume on. All right.
It is my personal belief that there are residents, visitors, and strangers. Residents being, I believe, entities that have been here long before humanity appeared, and in fact may have had some hand in making us who we are today. Otherwise, we'd still be primates with bonobos, chimpanzees, and gorillas. We're not. We've been elevated. And I believe it is the residents who did this.
Short, sharp, and sweet. I mean, he kind of lays it out. That's what he believes. That's someone who was from a top level in the CIA. Remember, the CIA were the Skunk Works' best customer. The CIA have one of the best air forces in the world, and someone at the top echelons of the CIA is telling us that humanity we are not here by accident. Let's put it that way. And there are people that have been here or beings that have been here for a long time. Now, the next video we're going to watch is Danny Sheehan. So if you don't know who Danny Sheehan is, he's an American Constitution and public interest lawyer. He's actually represented Lou Elizondo and Stephen Greer, which is weird because they don't like each other, but he has represented them both over his time as a lawyer. And the video we're about to watch is him speaking to Yale University scholars, and this is only a few months ago. So, I mean, not only I'm not showing you this, well, I am showing you this for the content that Danny talks about, but just also consider the fact that Yale University, like one of the most well-established and respected universities in the world, is, allowing and approving of someone to be telling this kind of information to their students. I think that in itself is quite groundbreaking here. Now, let me find this. There we are.
Okay, that you want to start reaching out to help our fellow human beings prepare for this, because this is going to have huge repercussions on the geopolitical structures of our planet, the economy of our planet, the religious institutions of our planet, the domestic political institutions that we have. We have to work together to be able to maintain as much agency, as much sovereignty as we can possibly legitimately maintain in the face of the revelation of the existence of this extraterrestrial civilization. You know, the fact of the matter is they seem to be preparing now to potentially intervene directly to stop the thermonuclear war and to stop the total devastation of our ecological systems on our planet. Okay, and that means that the intervention is going to reveal their presence. And that's what's motivating a significant number of people in the Pentagon right now to be coming forward, trying to establish a systematic process for a controlled disclosure about their presence. Because they believe that if in fact this is put off and the Defense Department continues to lie about this, then what's going to happen is when the intervention takes place on the part of the extraterrestrial civilization, it's going to be totally disruptive. That people are not prepared for it, that they haven't prepared to know how to respond to it economically, politically, geopolitically, religiously and theologically, you know, and philosophically. This is something that needs to be done at the academic level. All of these departments have to mobilize now and start to prepare our people for this intervention that's getting ready to take place. Okay, we want this to be as amicable as possible. We want to get on famously with the extraterrestrial civilization. We don't want to lose our sovereignty. We want to be able to maintain as much self-governance and control as we can on our planet. But the fact of the matter is that we have made the mistake of allowing 0.1% of the elite on our planet to take over and continue to run things for their own primary advantage. We are the beneficiaries, for example, here in North America, of a lot of the trickle-down theory of the advantage that we get from their elite rule. But the bottom line is, that elite rule has led us to the edge of thermonuclear war right now, to ecological devastation. And so we've got to mobilize now. We've got to mobilize, we've got to educate our people, we've got to bring the academic community on board this, and this has to be done from the inside. And that's why we've come here today to Yale. That's why we're reaching out to the other universities today through the streaming process that we have, and that we want to get everybody engaged in utilizing all of the constitutional tools that we have at our disposal, all of the educational tools that we have at our disposal, so that this can be as peaceful and amicable a process as possible.
I mean, again, he's been approved and allowed to say those things to the students at Yale University. Being prepared for an intervention, important that we maintain our sovereignty and the hope that we get along amicably with this extraterrestrial race. Like, he is speaking not in what ifs, but whens. He is talking as if this is something that he knows is coming very soon. And, you know, in the UFO space, we all know that there is something coming on the horizon. It's been talked about for years, from Lou Elizondo, John Ramirez. Usually the 2027 gets thrown around as like the year, but they've also kind of come out and said it's not necessarily fixed to 2027. It's, well, it sounds like at the very least, it's 2030 at the latest, right? And going back to what we saw Lou Elizondo say before, like, what if the very act of disclosing it triggers an event? And maybe this disclosure and these whistleblowers that are coming in early 2025 will be that trigger, and we see some kind of mass intervention shift that happens. Again, conjecture, don't take me too seriously. I'm connecting dots. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just connecting the dots as I see them. Okay, next person is Tucker Carlson. This one is a quick one. Again, just listening to what he has to say about what he has learnt.
I feel like I've learned probably too much about a couple of topics because, and by the way, there's some things that I can't prove that I believe to be true, so I don't repeat them. But, you know, the UAP stuff, some of it is really distressing to me, what I believe to be true, but I can't prove it. But as I've said before, I think it's spiritual. I think some of these things are dark, anti-human. Probably some aren't, but you know,
Do you think because there's potential anti-human properties that there's actually pro-human supernatural?
Well, I think God's real for sure. And as, you know, evil flourishes, you also see its obverse. You see good at work. You see God at work. I do in my life all the time in a way that I didn't, say, 5 years ago. I wasn't thinking like that at all. I'm a very secular person who grew up in a very secular world. Unlike you, I did not grow up in any recognizable church at all. And so I had none of those assumptions. But no, I think it's, you know, in bad times like this one, there are miraculous and heartening moments, and I like see that all the time.
So Tucker obviously views this from a very like religious lens, religious perspective. And I think there are a group within the government somewhere who potentially have a say on whether this thing is disclosed or not, who are also very religious and do see this phenomenon as a angels versus demons kind of thing. Again, that could be true, but that could just be the lens that they're looking through. Someone else who isn't religious might interpret it completely different. And that's exactly like what the essence to Jacques Vallée's book, Passport to Magonia, in that this phenomenon has been around for a very long time. It's just been interpreted very differently depending on the social constructs and narratives in civilization at the time. Next one, Robert Dean. This one's interesting. So this is a bit of an older video. This guy he's a retired command sergeant major in the US Army who, according to him, I can't prove it to you, but according to him, held a cosmic top secret clearance. All right, this one's about 3 or 4 minutes. Check this out.
And at that time, I was given a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the war room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964 and it was published, and I was still working in the war room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life has never ever quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, but they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant, or in an airplane, or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. The point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he said, "Geez, do you realize they could even be in the White House?" And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The SHAPE conclusions in '64 were that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. they had concluded by 76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions. There's a brilliant young professor in New York by the name of Michio Kaku, who has written a brilliant book called Hyperspace, where they talk about 10 separate dimensions. I'm not enough of a physicist to try to explain to you what a dimension is, but the idea that there could be intelligences from somewhere else, from other dimensions coming and going into our reality. It's been quite a shakeup in traditional science. I guess I speak out openly and bluntly about this because I feel so strongly about it. I violate my security oath every time I speak about it. I do it intentionally and I do it on purpose, because I feel so strongly that the American people not only have a right to know the truth, but they have a need to know the truth. The truth, Don, apparently is simply this, that we're not alone, we've never been alone. We are apparently part of an infinite universe filled with intelligent life.
Okay, so that is, we've got a couple more, but I just want to talk about how Robert Dean's perspective on things. That video was filmed in the 70s, and he's passed away now. Okay, so again, none of this can be verified, but he mentions that these things not only manipulate gravity, but they can, well, as a byproduct of manipulating gravity, you are manipulating time, because these things we understand are now linked. If you can manipulate gravity, you can bend time. Therefore, you can time travel. Okay? So, Professor Michael Masters has written a book about the extratempestrial model. So rather than extraterrestrial, extratempestrial means they're coming from another time. Now, through quantum physics and, this kind of research, if we are beginning to realize that time travel is genuinely a possibility, like maybe we don't know how to do it yet, but if at least the science and theories are beginning to look like and prove that it's possible, like that means it's always been possible, which could mean there could have been people from the future in our past for as far back as our past goes. Because once that becomes possible, once time travel becomes possible, whenever that is, it's then possible through all time. Does that make sense? I think I'm explaining that poorly, but once you can time travel, that means there can be time travelers at any point, anywhere, at any time, right? Because that's the concept of time travel. So I just wanted to highlight that before we get into Jordan Crowder's, which isn't the next one. The next one we're going to look at is Cliff Mahooty, who is a Native American elder of the Zuni tribe. Okay, so I'm bringing this one in because we looked at the Hopi prophecy last week. Now, the Zuni tribe are from New Mexico, and I just wanted to give Cliff Mahooty's perspective from like a Native American traditional cultural perspective of the phenomenon and humanity's place on Earth and within it. Okay, here we go.
But if you look at, for example, in the Zuni mythology and the creation myth, it was not some machine or some being or some nuts and bolts type thing that came or Cray 2 computer type. It was a light source that came, and the only reason that we know about, that he had emissaries that took, well, maybe they did all the menial labor, so to speak. And that's, again, that's all Indian tribes have that twin warrior mythology in their religious makeup. But the basic thing that occurs, or in question that you're asking, is that they've always been here. The people that are the keepers and the watchers, they've always been here, and the white men call them angels. They call other things throughout the different peoples of the world. But they've always been here. The only thing that they do not do is they don't make themselves visible. They have the activity has created today because of the turmoil that's happening. You've heard of a lot of paranormal activities that come around, and some of these beings can, especially in the flying saucer group, that they actually can walk through those walls there. I mean, and you've heard so many stories, and they're factual in many cases, of flying saucers flying right into a mountain, because to them it doesn't mean anything, nothing to them. In the Zuni world, we call it the raw people. Raw people, because they're so supernatural, and they got the cosmic magic that they can do anything. They can appear right here and stand right here next to me, and they can disappear. And these Tatas, they'll be on the other side of the world. I mean, this is some technology that we have no understanding about yet. It's always been here. As far as things that are happening right now throughout the whole world, it's because that's the one that man created with the help of the dark forces. And if you really want to come right down to it, in the Pueblo and the Indian world, where I'm from, they call that witchcraft.
So I thought that one was super interesting, especially at the end there where he says that, you know, this was created with, I think he used the term dark magic. And, you know, I've talked about briefly how the Nazis were obsessed with the occult and practiced dark magic. And we know that, like, at least hundreds, that's the generous estimate, hundreds of high-level Nazi scientists, such as Werner von Braun, who ended up leading the Saturn V. He designed the Saturn V rocket system to put America on the moon. America took the smartest Nazis in, and they all work through America now. And these people were actively practicing dark magic. I mean, you know, what that has eventuated into through American technological development, who knows? But anyway, we've got one more. I know this video is so much longer than I thought, by the way. I thought I'd maybe get this done in an hour, and I haven't even given you my theories yet. So hopefully you haven't been bored. I want to show you one more first, and this is another content creator, okay? This is Jordan Crowder. I'm going to pull him up and then just pause it quickly. So obviously this person isn't in the know, but I've been following Jordan's work. Well, his work. I mean, he's a content creator, so I've been following his videos for a long time. He's alive and kicking on TikTok, and he's also on X as well. I'll leave a link to this full video. This full video is about 8 minutes. I'm not going to show you that. I think I've cut it down to about 2 or 3. But it's really interesting, and the reason why I wanted to include it is because it's a theory that actually explains a lot of these things, like, you know, the whole feeling somber and helpless and not being able to sleep, fear, an incoming event that we can't stop, that's coming whether we like it or not, our obsession with war and weapons development. This is probably one of the first theories that I've heard, as kind of wild as it is, that makes sense, that it answers all of those things. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, that lines up. You know, you've got to draw on a few things that we've learned in the UFO community, but it does. It really lines up. So shout out to Jordan Crowder, aka Alive and Kicking, and let's have a listen to his theory here.
Anunnaki are actually future humans that escaped into the past and live inside the Earth in what scientists call ultra-terrestrials. and that they have been sort of engineering humans along the way to become this warrior class and inventors that serve as like foot soldiers, as a security force on the surface of the planet to guard against some sort of upcoming invasion. Okay? This sounds wild. I understand. It sounds like science fiction. There's actually a lot of supporting evidence to this, okay? And there's a lot of evidence for the fact that like ancient humans on Earth are actually far more advanced than current humans, okay? Well, this doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary standpoint. And also, Homo sapiens sapiens didn't evolve from monkeys. You're basically an idiot if you still believe that narrative. We can prove it. You know, we were tinkered with at a genetic level. Okay, so who tinkered with us and why? Where did this advanced ancient human come from? And it seems like they're still here. Like Jesse Michaels just did a great documentary about how all these UFOs and orbs and spheres and these new drones that everyone's talking about seem to be focused around nuclear power plants, nuclear silos, nuclear weapons depots, stuff like this, okay? The Nordic aliens that everyone talks about seeing, right? The tall, sort of blonde hair, blue eyes, sort of Nordic type aliens are in these flying saucer craft, and typically they're seen coming out of the earth, out of the oceans, out of volcanoes, out of caves, stuff like that, not coming down from the atmosphere. Okay, so we are constantly in a state of war, constantly creating new weapons, spending all of our money and research and development on making better weapons to kill each other. But they don't want us to wipe everybody out, right? They just want us to be really good at what we do. We're good at making weapons, good at making tools, and we're good at fighting. Okay, that's what humans do. Okay, so the whole planet is covered in soldiers, warriors, with tons of weapons. Well, if these were like these, I don't know, big brother kind of aliens that are here to protect us and help us, well, they probably wouldn't have guided us, because there's a lot of evidence that we were guided to making these nuclear weapons. By and large, some of our biggest technological advancements and developments have been weapons, okay? But they monitor. Like, there's all sorts of evidence that these drones and these orbs and spheres are monitoring all of our nuclear weapons, because they don't want us to do anything stupid with them. The point is not for us to use them on ourselves. What if the point is for us to, essentially, we've like booby-trapped the Earth. They live inside the Earth. We've booby-trapped the surface, and we are armed to the teeth. And there's 8 billion of us. We're heavily armed, heavily trained, tons of militaries, tons of weapons, and a lot of them are pointing up, if you've noticed, right? Pointing up to the sky. What if they know that some event happens in the future, some sort of an invasion, and this is all just getting ready for it? They can't tell us that, because people would freak out. So instead, they create these little wars, just enough to keep our R&D going, keep the military-industrial complex going, and keep everybody battle-tested, right? Ready to go.
So I just thought that was such an interesting theory, right? So it kind of goes on the fact, assuming that, you know, anti-gravity time travel is possible, that there are people from the future that have came to our past to genetically enhance us, and a byproduct of that is that we have kind of benefited, right? We have kind of become the dominant, extremely dominant species of the surface of the Earth. But we actually serve a greater purpose to something or someone else. And that could relate to this incoming event that is said to happen very soon. The event that I think makes people feel like it's hard to sleep at night, that makes them feel somber, and fear and helpless, and that, yeah, it would force us to reconsider like what it means to be human. It's, you know, we might be the apex predator of the surface of the Earth, but, you know, the oceans are deep. As Michael Herrera said, everything that is critical to this Earth is not on the surface, it is underground. That is what he said in Chris Leto's podcast. So check out that podcast. Check out Jordan Crowder. Like I said, that full video is 8 minutes. I cut it down. But shout out to him. Give him a follow. He's just comes across like a really nice and genuine guy who spreads a good, positive message. And, you know, if we are on the brink of some big event and some turbulent times as a civilization, I think people giving out that kind of message is the kind of media and messages we should be consuming that help guide us in a good and positive direction. So that brings us to talking about my theories. Now, as I said, I can't believe how long this has gone. We're at like 2 hours and 15 minutes. But it's the end of the year, right? This is a big wrap-up episode, sending off 2024 and welcoming everybody into 2025. So I'm not going to hold back here. Okay. And you might see that I'm kind of reading off of a script a lot here. And that's because I wrote all of this out because I really thought about this, and I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say exactly what I think is factual. But again, the caveat to that is I can't prove any of this. I'm not married to these ideas. These are just the opinions that I've formulated based on all the podcasts I've listened to, the things that I've read, and the videos and documentaries that I've watched. This is how I interpret the phenomenon and every aspect of it. Okay. So first of all, I think that we are dealing with more than one thing here. I don't think the phenomenon is just related to UFOs or aliens, or that there's just one type of alien. I think this is a very multifaceted issue that involves aircraft, technology, integration and treaties with governments, orbs, interdimensional orbs potentially, different races of non-human intelligence. I think this has a lot to do with our consciousness. Actually, I think it has everything to do with our consciousness. And I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts on 2025, what I think is going to be disclosed, and what I kind of think about how religion will have a role in this. Okay, so here we go. Starting with UFOs and orbs. So I think that not all of them are alien. I think I've kind of made that clear in this episode, right? We're learning that a lot of the crazy stuff out there is actually ours. Stuff that would look like magic, stuff that we couldn't believe came from this earth, does. It is ours. And as Don Phillips told us, this is stuff that came from another place that we reverse engineered, figured out how to use, and applied it and used it. They are his words, and I believe that. I'm 100% convinced that Lockheed Martin have the technology to blow our minds, like genuine stuff that looks like magic, warp drive, teleportation even, everything. And so I think it is pretty much for us regular ape humans, it's impossible for us to distinguish what is an ET craft versus a skunkworks advanced aircraft, because I think we are at a point where they are going to look the same. Completely the same, and we're not going to, we can't tell. The only distinct difference there is between the physical nuts and bolts craft, like when we talk about like triangles and saucers, versus orbs and lights in the sky. So I think there's some kind of distinct difference there, and I think there's a possibility that the orbs are perhaps interacting with us from another dimension. I've got kind of two thoughts about this. I'll talk about this one first, but these orbs do things that we can't compute or wrap our head around what they're doing. We don't understand how they stay in the sky, how they just move in any direction at insane speed. They seem to intelligently react when they're intercepted by aircraft and things. They've turned off nuclear weapons. They hover over bases. But to us, it's just a ball of light. So I wonder if it is something from a higher dimension, but from the limitations of our third dimension, that is how we perceive it, right? So just to help explain that very quickly and briefly, I'll do my best. We know that the first dimension, or like one-dimensional thing, is just like a dot, right? But to make that dot now two-dimensional, it would be a line, because now we've got two different points. So we've got that second dimensional reference point. But from the perspective of the first dimension, if you are looking down that line, you can't actually see the line because you're limited from the first dimension perspective. Okay, it still just looks like a dot to you. And then obviously we get the third dimension, whereas now we can go forward and we can go sideways, which is the dimension that we live in. We can kind of go up, down, left, right, because that's our dimension. But even to the line, right? So now we've got the second dimensional line. As we move in and out, from the perspective of the line, you can't see that in and out happen because you're not in the third dimension, right? So I wonder if these orbs are perhaps something from a higher dimension, whatever that might be. Some people suggest that it's like time. I don't know. Whatever that higher dimension is, perhaps that's what these orbs are. And that's why it kind of doesn't really make sense what we're seeing. That's just a theory. I also think these orbs are responsible for many, if not all, religious interpretations as like divine intervention, angels, Ezekiel's wheel. I think these are orbs. The Star of Bethlehem, in the the story of Jesus being born. I'm not religious really, so sorry if this is a bit wrong. But the Star of Bethlehem, Mary followed the star. Okay, well, stars don't move, do they? No, but orbs do. So they kind of look like stars. So maybe there's a bit of something there. I think that they've been here for a very long time, as a lot of those people just suggested. And my alternative theory, and maybe this could even work with the multidimensional theory about orbs, but my alternative theory is that they are potentially a form of just like wildly advanced AI. Okay, so they are an AI system, perhaps developed by like the Anunnaki or whatever kind of seeded consciousness, whatever took us from being just another ape and pushed us into higher intelligence. I mean, remember, like if you look at the scale of the Earth and the human timeline of our intelligence and technological production, it's like this for like billions of years. And then in like the last 1,000, which is like a little pinprick, or in the last couple of thousand, it just went whoosh. So something happened there, and whoever was responsible for whatever that is potentially also has the technology to have like an AI security monitoring system for the Earth, and that these orbs pop up in times of conflict to turn off weapons, steer people into like certain beliefs and systems that help society function in a better way. Again, just a theory, don't take it too seriously. Do your own research, think critically, etc. That's what I think about that. Okay, now let's talk about aliens. First of all, I don't think there's just one type. Like this whole thing isn't just about one race of aliens. I think there's probably many. I mean, the universe is so incomprehensibly big that for there to only be one other is almost like, that almost makes less sense than saying there's 5 or 10 or many more, given the size of the universe, right? Like if they exist, there being only one type and they happen to be here, that actually makes less sense in my opinion. So I think there's many. And I think they all have different agendas, different priorities and ideas. So I think not all of them are good and not all of them are bad either. I think there are some that are probably interested in helping us and that some probably don't care about us, like even at all. Like they maybe are just like, we're just another sort of species that lives near them. They don't really care about us. They're just kind of doing their own thing. But maybe they start to get annoyed, bothered, or care when we start to destroy the Earth where they also live, because that becomes a problem for them as well. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about different kinds of aliens. So I think, first of all, let's start with the greys. I think greys is a very blanket term. Obviously, there's like the short greys and the tall greys, but it's, from what I've read and listened to, it sounds like there are also others that would maybe fall into the category of greys because they look very similar, but not exactly like the traditional large black almond eyes, massive head, but like maybe a slightly smaller head, but still bigger than ours, big eyes, but they're actually more human looking. Like, I think there is perhaps a lot within the gray category. A lot of reports say that the traditional looking gray that is on, what you would get if you Googled gray alien, seem to be more like a biological AI, that like it's something that was kind of created with a biological suit and is more like an AI that is designed to perform a task, or it serves a purpose, rather than actually having its own compassion and intelligence and consciousness. And then we get into the reptilians. So I don't really have much to say about reptilian, because I mean, this is just, this is when we start getting wild, and I can't say anything for sure in this space. But if we talk about there being good and bad extraterrestrials, if we assume that bad exists and I had to pick one, it sounds like potentially reptilian is the one to go to there. Insectoid as well. And insectoids are something that you don't really hear of as much, but you do hear about them through like ancient African cultures and tribes. Native American tribes even talk about ant people. Like, you don't hear about that much, but the places you do hear about it are really interesting. It's not really from like, you hear about it in some abduction cases, insect-looking entities, but in like general UFO lore, they're not mentioned as much as the others, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that there is going to be potentially some kind of aquatic race, and that may have something to do with what we're seeing in the water. So much of our ocean is unexplored. And I wonder if maybe a lot of it actually is, but we're just not told about it. Because I find it hard to believe that we haven't explored the ocean. After all this time, with the technology we have, I feel like we either have and we just don't want to say what we found, or something has told us that we're not allowed to go there or stay out. I think it's probably more something like that. So again, coming back to the whole idea of good and evil, I think that we, for certain races, I think that we humans are potentially like a highly sought after wild exotic animal. So to give you like a metaphor, we are like the African elephants. Okay, bear with me. And there are extraterrestrials out there who are like poachers, illegal poachers, who just have no consideration or care for our existence or happiness or our life, essentially. But what they do care about is our ivory tusks, because that's really special to them. And we are the only thing that can give them that. Now, obviously, this is a metaphor. We don't have tusks. I know that. But there's something about us that an extraterrestrial race is capitalizing on to their benefit and our detriment. And I feel like we need to not think in a physical sense here, okay? Because there's obviously nothing that's physically harming us, but I think we need to think about in a more psychological sense. And I think this is why awareness is important, because you need to expand your consciousness and become aware of like your own feelings and like, what's going on in your own body and in your own mind, and like, becoming aware of those things. Because if you aren't, I feel like you can be psychologically manipulated into these like negative energy states, but you don't realize that. You just think that's life and you're a victim and everyone sucks and the world's just terrible. But then once you gain a bit of awareness, I think you can start to realize that what's causing that, like where does that negative energy come from? Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of what if we're talking about aliens, non-human intelligence interacting with us in a way that's to our detriment, I think it's going to be something like that. Like it's almost like a symbiotic relationship, or maybe like a parasitic relationship, where we are the host and there is some kind of like, not in everybody, but in some people, there can be like a parasitic like passenger that, if we aren't aware of, can seep in and do a lot of damage. Conversely, I think there are also non-human intelligence races that are more like conservationists, and they really care about the planet, the universe, the people in it, and they want to see our race grow, evolve, and collectively help us expand our consciousness. So yeah, I do think there's good and bad, just like in life, right? There's good and bad. And maybe the good and bad in life comes from a psychological type parasitical host relationship within people's consciousness. This is the kind of realm where I think this phenomenon is lying. So we got more to get to. Lou Elizondo talks about, I don't know if it was in that little cut of Lou that I played earlier, but I think I did show it in the Hopi video at the very end, which there's a link to in the description. he talks about how the dog, like our pets, the dogs, benefited a lot from the human ascension. Okay, so like, again, there was that little point in time where humans shot up from being apes to where we are today. And along that line, dogs we kind of brought dogs with us. You know, there was a time where they were really useful to us as a hunter, and we utilized that for our own survival and our own gain and benefit. And that now they're still, they don't hunt for us, but now they're our companions. They serve us in other ways still. So the dog has benefited from the human evolution and growth. Well, I think that could apply to us, and we are like the dog in a greater entity's life cycle. Okay, we have benefited and grown due to the needs of something beyond what we know or can comprehend, at least right now. And so, yeah, I think what I'm trying to say there is that consciousness was perhaps gifted to humanity. Okay, something took us from being stone-throwing, club-wielding cavemen to being able to host a YouTube channel like this and talk to thousands of people from a camera. Okay, something happened. And I think that ability was gifted to us in exchange for something. And that something would have benefited whoever gave it to us. And again, going back to the consciousness host type relationship, Robert Dean, who we heard from before, Bob Lazar, they've all said that the ETs view us as containers for souls. So like our bodies are like a host for a soul. And perhaps maybe that's why we're valuable to them. Perhaps they do exist in another dimension, and by having these containers, they're able to project their consciousness and their soul life essence into us. And that's how we got here today. Like maybe like our consciousness is them, like we are them in a way, like our ascension is the hybrid race. Like we have become the hybrids. Yeah, just a theory. Again, come on, we're spitballing ideas here. But this is what I'm happy to put out there as my prediction and thoughts of where we are at right now. What else have I got here? There's still a lot more to go. Okay. Just finishing off on that point, the idea and in meditations, we often say that, we are not our bodies, we are our soul. Like we are consciousness. We are not this physical matter. We are the voice in our head. Like that is what we are. And that doesn't die. That part doesn't die, right? And this has kind of been confirmed through multiple independent testimonies of near-death experiences. Now, this is something that you can't tangibly prove. So coming at this with the whole show me a photo, show me evidence, then I'll believe it. You can't apply that. If you stick with that primitive thinking, you stay as a primitive human. Now, that doesn't mean believe everything that you're told, but I think independent corroborative testimony is the most powerful thing we have when investigating anything and trying to understand anything. I mean, when police take statements from people, the first thing they do is they split everyone up so they can't corroborate a story and they hear it independently. And we are essentially getting the same thing, right? Across the world, thousands of years, thousands of people are all telling us these same things, that our conscious lives on after we die. People who have had DMT experiences seem to go to another realm where they feel like they're back home. The same things that people with near-death experiences say, that once they pass, some of them say they can physically see their bodies and they're kind of having an out-of-body experience. There's accounts of a lady who watched people operate on her and was able to recall things that happened and things that were said during the operation, that after she came back to life, she told the doctors and they were just freaked out because they knew that she was clinically dead at the time. So these kind of independent corroborative testimony prove that, okay? Not tangibly, but if you think critically, That's what I believe. Okay. They all believe that they all say that when they've had this experience, that once they pass from this life, that they are overwhelmed with love and joy and a feeling that they are like back home. They're back where they came from. And like, there's this feeling of how all the like troubles and issues that they had in their life instantly just feel like so silly. And they're just like, oh my God, why was I worrying about that when I was always going to be coming back here soon? And like, it's so happy. It's so lovely. So stoked to be seeing everyone again. Like it's that kind of vibe. It's almost like they forgot they were wearing a virtual reality headset. That's kind of what it sounds like, that they forgot they were actually just playing this little game and having this little experience. They got a bit too wrapped up in it all. So yeah, to wrap that section up, perhaps there is like a symbiotic relationship between like us, extraterrestrials, that involves consciousness and our bodies. So moving into 2025 and disclosure and what I think is going to be coming soon. Well, first of all, I think I've made that kind of clear that I think the world is about to change massively. I don't know if that's going to be like a fast or slow thing. I think it's probably more likely to be, I feel like it's going to be slow until it's fast. And I feel like at the beginning of 2025, that slow change might begin to happen. And it's going to ramp up to a point and get quicker and quicker until the pinnacle of this change happens. And that's going to be massive, and that's going to be fast, and it's going to be like, whoa. And I think, yeah, that's going to begin in early 2025. And I think by January of 2027, the world will be very different in some certain ways. I don't think that like our whole life isn't going to change, but some fundamental aspects of it will, or the way we view it will be very different. Lou Elizondo, John Ramirez, who we both heard from earlier, and Colonel Carl Nell, who I'm going to be doing a video that includes him next week. They've all alluded to this event happening around 2027, but they've also all said that it's not necessarily tied to 2027. Lou Elizondo said that talking about it could trigger it. At least that's what it seems. But Carl Nell has specifically said that we need disclosure now, and it needs to be controlled, because if we don't control it, disclosure is going to happen whether we like it or not. And if it happens without a controlled disclosure, the disclosure will be catastrophic. It will be like global ontological shock. People won't know how to handle it, especially when you look at how people handled COVID. And if it is the idea of some other race invading or existing that are now making themselves known, if we aren't slowly introduced to the idea of a non-human intelligence existing on this planet, perhaps underground or in the ocean, that is far superior than us, if people go from, you know, just like the average kind of guy who watches footy, goes to work in the pub, and, you know, that's just like his life, never looks at any of this kind of stuff, gets told this, it's probably going to like shatter them. I've spoken about this before, and I really like this example, and that is that if even someone who believes in Jesus, devout Christian their whole life, church every week, their whole life, undoubtedly believes and knows that God and Jesus is real. If they saw in their lounge room a white portal open up and Jesus stepped out, they are going to shit their pants, okay? Because the difference between believing in something and knowing and seeing that it's real is massive, really massive. So I think this slow disclosure that's been happening since 2017 has been the warm-up to this event, to prime people for what's coming. Because remember, they lied and covered this stuff up for 80 years. But it sounds like something's coming, whether we like it or not, that's going to get the truth out there. And we need to prepare people. Otherwise, it's going to be catastrophic. So I think we're going to learn that there is possibly a highly advanced race that lives inside the earth, perhaps the ocean as well, but definitely underground. and that these beings might be responsible for the orbs, the USOs, UFOs, and the large amount of like water-based UFO activity as well. And I think once this becomes public knowledge, it will trigger something that forces us to restructure society to fit in with this new understanding. So this kind of leans into what Danny Sheehan just said earlier, and that I think there is the risk of us losing our autonomy, losing out the way we do things, and we'll have to begin to model aspects of our society based on like in a similar fashion to this race. Okay, we're gonna have to change the way we look and do things, not the way we look physically, the way we look at things and the way we do things. And finally, and this is just a little footnote, if this happens and there is some kind of race that lives in the ocean that is aquatic and advanced, I think there is some connection to Atlantis there. That's all I'm going to say about that one. Just a couple of things that I've written here on UFOs is that about religion. UFO research has led me and many others, but led me independently to then realize that I'm not alone in this thought process. Many others to realize that this phenomenon is what religion has been based on, essentially. There is complete parallels to these orbs and what we're seeing in the sky and what we are told about in religion. And someone had a great example that religion and science are like a pyramid. And on one side of the pyramid is religion and one side is science. And when you start at the very bottom, they're just like so far apart. But as you go up the pyramid, they converge at a point, and that point is the phenomenon. And I think through science now we are beginning to discover the origins of religion, which is this phenomenon of UAP, non-human intelligence, UFOs, etc. So I think that covers it all. At like 2 hours 40, I did not expect this to go that long. So I just want to stress again that these are just my theories. These are just my ideas, and they're conjecture. I've been researching this stuff for a long time, nearly 20 years, and I feel confident and comfortable enough to kind of give my opinion publicly, because I feel like, you know, if you still think this stuff is taboo, it's just because you haven't looked at it properly, and that's okay. I understand that. This isn't mainstream stuff. But I think 95% of those people are probably smart enough that if they did spend a little bit of time, just like we do, you would have realized that, man, there is something going on here, and it seems like we're about to find out as well. So again, I'm just pointing out my ideas and theories that I have gathered based on the data that is available to everybody. Do your own research. Let's wrap up the show. Like I said, this has been so long. If you're still, I wasn't going to do this, but because it's so long, if you're still watching at this point, let me know if you do leave a comment at the end. I want you to just write disclosure 2025, or even just write disclosure 2025 as a comment to let me know that you watched the whole way, because this is so long that if you're still here, you're a real one. And I won't forget that. I've got a good memory. So thank you all so much for your support in 2024. I know that 2025 is going to be massive, not just like for me or this channel, but for the world as a whole. And, you know, I'm excited. It could be weird. It could be rough times, but I want to make it my job to help guide you all through that. And I want to stress that I am a guide. I'm not a guru. Okay. Like I said, this is all conjecture. I'm not a guru. I'm a guide researching this stuff, learning about it just like you guys are. So again, if you've made it this far and you haven't already, please subscribe to the video, give it a like, share it around with your friends as well. That's what really helps us grow. Remember, you can become a member of Polarity now. Thanks to all of your support. It's $5 a month. That's going to support me directly as well. You get a badge next to your name. The badge kind of grows and changes over time. I think at the moment they're just the YouTube default ones, but you know, I don't do default. I like designing. So we're going to get some cool badges. We're gonna make it all look awesome. There's going to be perks to tuning in on a live stream. You get shout outs, members only chats, all that kind of stuff. As we grow, it's all going to grow with it. But there should be a link below the video. If you do want to support me and become a member, check that out. I hope you all have a great, happy, and safe transition into 2025. And as always, be kind to each other, check in on your mum and dad, support your mates, and I will see you in 2025.